Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Trusty Ape. Might have to tune that one up. But we're here. We made it on time. This is Church of Ape for December 7th, 2025. And there is a link down there in that good old live chat. And pull up a video that I found last night. Actually, I was watching it last night live, and it's a long one. There's actually two portions of the conversation that I caught that I wanted to focus on. I think we'll only get around to one of them today, and may save the other for another time. And I see we got Sandy. Good to see you, Sandy. Do we get to swing from the tree limbs in the Church of Ape? Possibly, yeah. I mean, if there are any trees. There's none in the house, but outside we do have some. Yeah, that's a good way to worship the ape gods, right? Let me go over to the YouTube side. And I can pin that link. I use the AI generated thumbnail from StreamYard this time, and I'm not like super impressed. I was like, is this really the best we can do with AI? I'm sure there's probably like more options or features I could have chosen, like that I'm not aware of or whatever, and maybe if I upgraded to the premium, but anyway, we're not doing that today. So, hey, bro hug, William Freeman, good to see you. And I've got this video. It is from JG's channel. And we'll just have to find, I didn't timestamp, so we'll have to find the appropriate spot, but I know just about where it is, I think. God, he went on for almost 12 hours. That's crazy. Crazy, crazy. I do still, I do still feel compelled at some point to go and respond to his question that he posted on the Darth Dawkins Debunked the website video and a comment that I made. I was thinking about doing it today, but I don't think we'll get there. Okay, so here we got Tog and Lionheart are in the room. They're having some discussion, and Tog's going to pull up a conversation he had on Breakfast Tacos channel here in just a minute. So
horse riding unicorns and rainbows. It's like, what is happening?
I think about the picture in the thing, yeah.
Horse riding.
Might be.
He's got.
Yeah, I think he's a bit. That's his. That's.
Oh, I went a little too far.
All right,
like
so it depends on what side of that you're on. Well, I would say.
I just meant it like that in a sarcastic, sardonic way.
Yeah. Sardonic, that's one people don't often use.
Yeah.
All
I like
right,
it.
so you got it, right?
Yeah, press play.
Wait, is this an animated version of this guy? Is that how he actually looks? Jill was saying that was actually him.
That's actually his face, but that's AI edited so he looks happy.
Thank you, William, and happy holidays to you.
He's got, but he's
Forest Kitty. I happened to I saw an article like popped in my newsfeed from one of these like pop science magazines, and they were talking about how the raccoons in like the major cities were grooming themselves and like so they're trying to look more like house pets or something. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That reminded me of that reminded me.
he's like videos of him like running around and like skipping around like a big,
Oh, you
big
mean-
dude, you know?
I think he's a big dude. I don't know him personally.
He's
I don't know
riding
him,
the
but he
horse.
might be.
He's got
Yeah,
like
it's all AI. I
AI
thought you meant
and,
the
like,
picture and the thing. Yeah.
horse riding unicorns and rainbows. It's like, what is happening?
We're a neat bunch, yeah. I don't know. I don't presume to know what Breakfast Tacos looks like. If he looks anything like his avatar, I don't know. He kind of sounds like he could look like that. You know what I mean? Like matching a voice to a face, but never quite certain with people on YouTube. And hey, Viking Silverwolf, good to see you.
Here.
Yeah, it's insane. It's just visual effects, I imagine, to keep people's attention. You know, ooh, look, shiny thing.
That is their game. I'll give you that.
I mean, he even has a degrading feature. It's not really degrading, but like, I think he does a thing where like if you pay certain amounts, he'll like wear layers of clothes, and then he'll take off one layer of clothes until
Oh,
you
no.
know. So it's like, make me work for my for my money, right? It's like, dang, how far are you willing to sell yourself, right?
Yeah, man, degeneracy.
Yeah, I like it. I wish I could be like that. I'm too
If
much
you
of
want donations, you got to jump through the hoops, bro.
a coward. Yeah.
We got a live one here.
Yep.
None of that was disengaging. None of it was engaging at all. Noel, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, guys?
What position do you hold?
This is this one guy. I go by Noel also. From the side
Gotcha.
chat.
What type of theist are you?
Christian.
Gotcha. So did you hear? I guess you were back there during that. Did you hear the
Not
argument
all of
I
it.
presented?
Not all of it. I wasn't paying attention, but yeah.
Oh, Silverwolf. Yeah, well, I'm glad to see you back. And sorry, yeah, kind of stuff's been rough lately. It's like that time of year, but yeah, looks like you got a keyboard and mouse back now. So I actually I have to attach my my little wireless USB mouse to this computer because I haven't been using it, but we'd probably get a lot less like keyboard clicking and noises and shit if I had it.
So is your God a necessary being?
I would imagine, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So necessarily, if God exists, God necessarily exists. That's premise one. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
You're gonna let
Premise one: if God exists, God necessarily exists. And Tog agrees.
it. Well, hold on. You want
Premise
to
two.
pause?
And JG is going to stop him right here. Now, he's going to point out, like, as anybody who's watched this, I've watched a bit of Taco's content. He is using certain arguments from Darth. You know, they're probably like cribbed from Bonson or whoever. So he's got some of those standard precept tactics that he turns on theists, right? That's his whole thing. So, and I think Tog knew this going in here. So,
Dude, you don't want to let someone set up an argument for you. You probably know this though at this point, right?
Well, just
well, yeah. He's not making the argument, right? He's asking him if he agrees with the initial premise, so they can move from there, right? So that's just kind of simplifying things, so you don't have to like make an opening statement or whatever.
just wait and watch. But yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm just saying in general, like you don't. I mean, you can, but good.
My method is let people talk, and then you let them say their
But
whole.
you're
thing,
agreeing
and then
to.
you-
Yeah, but you're doing more than that. You're agreeing to him constructing an argument for you. But I guess you still have to agree to it. So I got you.
Possibly
Well,
God
if you agree on the initial premise, at least for the sake of argument, right, then you could just proceed from there.
doesn't exist. Do you agree with that?
I don't think I could agree with that.
Wait, go back to the first premise now. Sorry.
So can you
Okay,
Okay,
God
perfect.
isn't necessary.
I wasn't paying attention, but yeah.
So is your God a necessary being?
I would imagine, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So necessarily, if God exists, God necessarily exists. That's premise one. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Premise two, possibly God doesn't exist.
Right there. That's an error. If God is necessary, he has to exist. Premise two doesn't follow.
Well, I mean, yeah, so that's where the contention lies right there, right? So he set it up that way because he said if God exists, right? Which isn't something that a theist presupper would do. They would say um, um, that like God necessarily exists and in order to set up the next premise, but that's obviously not what Breakfast Taco is going to do. So
Right. But
That's
I did grant him this.
yeah, but I mean, think about that later. If you talk to him again,
Well, that kind of
that's
goes into like what I said earlier tonight. I haven't presented that back to him about the emergent God because he talks about things being emergent of the universe without a God. So I'm like, well, then why can't God be the same type of emergent thing?
what does
I
he
mean,
think a necessary God is when he follows up with God possibly doesn't exist? How is he thinking of this? Necessary means it must exist.
yeah,
And
that
then
was a
he's like,
weird one.
okay. And then he goes into, okay, so that's cool. Now let me answer this premise. God possibly doesn't exist. Go on, though.
Yeah.
because it's looking at the conception of God in the first place, right? It says if God exists, then that being it must exist necessarily, right? But if there's a possibility that that being doesn't exist, then it uh, then it wouldn't be necessary, right?
Do you agree with that?
I don't think I could agree with that.
Right.
So can you imagine a world where no God
Well,
exists?
yeah, I don't think it's relevant whether or not I would imagine a God not
Yeah,
to
it's
exist because
conceivability.
no, what I mean is that it wouldn't matter whether I can consider a God to exist or not. That God would have self knowledge of itself of it exist. So it's a
It's
oddly formed question.
conceivability. So the question is, can you conceive of a world with no God?
Could I conceive? Yeah.
Okay, so premise two is true then. So, or at least true according to your world.
Okay, yes. So if you can conceive of the world where the God does not exist, once again, the God is not necessary in that world, at least one that you can conceive of, right? So then, once again, back to the possibility that God might not exist. Not saying that God doesn't exist, but opening the door to doubt that
Your
claim.
worldview. And then the conclusion necessarily follows, therefore, God does not exist.
Yeah, he's punking you, dude.
Yeah, I don't agree with the conclusion because God would have knowledge of self.
So
even
which
if I-
premise do you
If he gets you to agree to the first two, he's punked you into accepting his conclusion, unfortunately. But you could always retract.
That's why I think I don't understand the second
He,
statement.
well, he got you to accept a contradiction, is what he did. I don't know if he knows it's a contradiction, but he got you to accept it. He said God is the necessary is necessary.
Remember, it's not a contradiction. The first premise began with an if clause, right? If this is the case, then this necessarily, right? But if it is possible this is not the case, right? So yeah, it's doubling back on it, but um, but I think it's phrased in such a way, right, where if you're being intellectually honest and you say, "Oh yeah, I can't imagine that scenario," right? Then the scenario itself is not automatically necessary in all cases, right? Which is what the presupper would have to say. This is a precondition to every other premise in the argument.
Necessary,
Right.
and he got you to agree to that. And he says, so if God is necessary, he may not exist. A necessary being has to exist. It's necessary. It's prior to all existence.
Right, which is
Right, and Jay catches that here. Ooh, who we got here? Uh-oh. I don't know who you are, but it looks like you're trolling. What? is this? Might as well be talking about a flat Earth. Yeah, there's a lot of absurdity going on here. Not sure whether I'm pulling the troll flag on here. Oh, you got a wrench. Who the fuck is this? Who is this blasphemer? I'm reading these comments. I am very confused. You have a wrench, I must know you. See, with the fucking at handles now. Okay. Oh, now I know who this is. Okay. Threw me off there with your changed ad names. Gay neighbors called the cops on me again for a sign that I had in my yard. The sign said that the Catholic Church is a criminal organization. I think they had a satanic panic again. Right. Well, I mean, it's definitely you call that First Amendment protected. Gay Catholics. I mean, I know they're out there. It just seems kind of a contradiction to me. But anyway, well, I guess the Catholic Church is more accepting of homosexuality than some churches. But yeah, this conversation is pretty absurd, and it gets better and better. Later on, there's another guy who jumps in here who I actually subscribe to because I find him pretty fascinating. And then he ends up going on a long detour with Jill, and then Jill later on ends up just taking over the stream and delivering sermon. So that's the part that we're probably not going to get to today, but maybe one day, maybe next time.
Which is why I said that doesn't make sense, because if I conceive of a world without God, my conceivability of that God doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think you were on the right track, and you were pointing that out, but I think he still got you to agree to it somehow. Maybe for the purposes you just wanted to move forward, but
I think watching back in this now, I didn't understand that. I think he was connecting the "can you conceive of a world" to that,
right.
equating that to the second premise.
Right.
I didn't catch that until
that.
now.
Okay, that's a great.
What's up, Todd? Good to see you. And you don't have a wrench here now? How did that happen? I don't know what's going on. Did you make a new channel? What do we have in the back? Oh, the one, the only.
Hey, what's up, man? How you been?
What's happening? I'm alright, having a good day. So, yeah.
I'm just coming over from missing mods from her side chat. I just saw I clicked over here. I'm like, oh, you're going over this. This is interesting. Yes.
Yes,
I'm
I
happy.
was listening and lurking while working, and then I saw the latter portion with the Jillabuster there too. So
I was gonna go over that. I completely missed. I'm like, I wonder what that. I'm like, that poor guy has to sit there with a chill. I'm like, oh man.
yeah, and he was trying to talk to him so rashly, and at some point he's like, "You're not like a serious person. Like nobody how can I have a conversation with this guy?"
Yeah, right. That's funny, man. I missed that. I fell asleep. I got like so tired. I stood up for like 24 hours. I was like, I need to go to bed, and I went to bed. But this was a pretty. He always. It was refreshing to have that young sounding gentleman in the side chat, like, or just join, because it felt like someone kind of understood some of the levels of the stupid mythologies and shit, and then just to hear it out. The thing about the many though was interesting. I even made a meme out of it. But I'll try to share it.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me see if I can shorten it. Go ahead, keep talking.
Eric Vaughn, where's your face? Welcome, good to see you.
There it goes. Yeah.
Great point. That's where the moment is where the answer to that is no. I can't conceive a world where God doesn't exist because God is necessary. The impossibility to the contrary. That's where. That is the answer to that. But okay, you took a different route, and he got you to take
which goes back to my original, like what I came here today about, like, again, presenting them with death as an ultimate authority, right? In a sense, if it's not God because it doesn't demand worship. It's not a personal relationship God. It just has as far as we know it, the ultimate last say until we can slowly prevent it, but we can't stop it. Right? We can slowly prevent, but we're not. There's no stopping.
As a Christian, why
So
would
I think the issue and the way that tacos did this, right, and so the fact that a thing is conceivable doesn't necessarily make it true, right? So just because you can conceive of the not God world doesn't prove that God doesn't exist, but by the same token, being able to conceive of a world where God is necessary doesn't necessarily prove that to be the case either. Like, I don't think either one logically follows there.
Right. And that's not what I'm saying, though. I'm not saying that I'm conceiving of a God, right? I'm saying there is a God, and I observed that God, which is completely different between I'm thinking of God. It completely is. It's like I observed God. I'm having life. You're having life. You're experiencing life. So how can we deny this thing that we call life and being alive when we're having it? It seems contradictory if that's the terms in which we call it.
Got you.
why would you promote such a theory? I just don't understand that.
Because the death is nullified by God Himself. Like God is an ultimate authority above death. Because again, it goes back to Jesus Christ. He didn't suffer death. He's the only exception to the rule. Like legit,
Well,
he is the exception to the rule in this
It's not that he
godless
didn't suffer
origin
death.
world. Go ahead.
It's not that
Sorry.
it's not that he didn't suffer death. It's that he defeated death.
Precisely. Precisely. That's
Yeah.
precisely the point. Is that?
Oh wait, is this your meme in your avatar?
Oh yeah.
Pull it up.
It was
here.
it was to his thing. I didn't want it to seem brash, so I didn't show it to him, but I still have it up. The many versus God and His bride. Look what they have to do to mimic a fraction of our power, which makes sense because you need a whole collateral of group, right? Because that's the thing. One, you have a group that's the omnis, and it's a whole group versus one that's the omnis. Like, it's obviously the one seems to have more power because it's a split of the group. The whole group needs to come together just to match that while you have one. Why is it a many versus the one anyway? Because, and then that just gets in how do you know that that one God didn't make all the other created like in that sense? Because it doesn't make sense. How do you get a whole group of uncreated beings? One's enough because it's a self-sustain. How does the group sustain itself? Where did it start in the order? Like, that just raises harder questions for me. Like, I could accept it, but how do you make it work without like
Kind of like
even in
when,
the
like,
even in
Yeah,
the
go
sense
ahead.
of the Trinity, right? The Trinity is unity in that, but it's still all of God. This thing that the person was talking about, this many are individuals but all uncreated. It was beautiful. I'm not gonna lie, but
I kind of so it reminded me of what, like, I'm thinking of is like when all the Power Rangers have to join their whatever their mech suits or whatever together so they can defeat this giant monster or something. It's kind of like that.
yeah, but he described it that it's not unity, so it can't be like the merging of all the. Because I even compared it to like the changelings, right, from Star Trek, because that's essentially what it is. It's like you all gather, all the spirit goes back to being the changelings, right? You all go back to the same source, except it's many. It's not just one. But he said the it's not one because they're not in unity. There's you are you, and that's it. You're not part of the group. You make up a group, but you're not the group. If you get what I'm saying, like that's a distinction because there's no one. There's just many, and that was his whole rant.
Right.
Because
right.
if you could be a one, then you're just right back at God, at the Trinity.
Yeah, well, and so it doesn't really explain. It's like no one would be more powerful than the other, right? Everything is literally equal. I guess there's no
Right, but
hierarchy.
How could they all like? Where did they all come from? Because they were all if they were always there, how could they have always been there? Like there's no birth. At least with God and all that, there's only one singular point that we could go to. And it's still the same singular point, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to dismiss that. It just says it makes it harder because which one did it? How did they all decide to make themselves into these things when they're already uncreated? Why would they need to be created to experience, to be alive when they're already the thing. You get what I'm saying? So off the
Yeah.
bat, that doesn't make sense because they're already not alone. They're already doing the unliving. Why would they need to be created in order to be uncreated again? That doesn't make sense. Like it. So right off the bat, I love his theology. I really do, but it just falls apart.
Yeah, yeah.
Like God doesn't make the creation for himself, but for his son, which is himself, but it's still separate, begotten of himself, right? There's no begetting in the group because it is you. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
All good, all good.
That's the only claim, besides any other religion that thinks that they're talking about the same thing as Christ, but they don't. Like all the dying and rising gods, usually they go back to the underworld or they're demigod status. They're not in the sense of ascending into heaven. That's like literally only with Christ.
Yeah, when you were, I'm not going to pick this apart or anything, but when I was listening to you describe the relationship, Christ with God and stuff a little bit earlier, you phrased it in a way that I really disagreed with, but I love the conversation, though. I really do. The idea of the Trinity and what it really is and how it breaks down is really easy to figure out if you just read the Hebrew words that are used for the scriptures there. It's really interesting.
Right. But that's my purpose is like they can't really deny death. It seems like weird for an atheist to say death isn't a thing, isn't a power. Because again, that goes back into the Bible about powers and principles that are our play that we wrestle with, not flesh and blood.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
yeah, so it's like, what are you gonna do with that, guys? Because yeah, you fight with death. You can't. Some people struggle with it all the freaking time. So it's one of those things. But yeah, again, looking back on that, I didn't realize he was tying it back to the conceptualize with the therefore God doesn't exist. That's just stupid. Like, so that's something that I can approach. But that's why I said the whole thing is like I'll let it go. I'll let it play out because I'm not gonna explain it because explain it. Let me play it.
Disagree
Include that it
with
didn't exist.
premise 1 or premise 2?
I would, like I said, I would have to disagree. Like as much as you can conceptualize a world without God, that doesn't
Well,
mean that
conceive
a
of a
God to
world.
itself does not exist.
Yeah, I
Hmm?
just provided the argument. So, which premise do you disagree with?
I said two.
2. So you said you can conceive of a world with no God. So you already agreed with premise 2. So why are you now coming and saying that you can't conceive of a world with no God?
Because based on the first premise of necessary being, if God is necessary to himself, God would have self-knowledge, whether I know about that God or not.
That's just
So
not
premise two
engaging with
fails
the argument.
based on the.
You almost got
Right?
it.
How is it not engaging? Hey, can you pause it for a second?
Like it is. I mean, maybe you're
Like-
saying something I don't understand. Granted,
So one reason why I'm saying that is it may not seem like it's engaging, but it's engaging by because he's asking for my take on it, and I'm giving him my take on God that's observed through the Bible, right? I am the I am. So like
Okay.
that's the hard part because if we are in life, then we are experiencing God. So it is although it's from God's perspective, it by every Christian default, it's our perspective because this is what we're being told. It's like if our fathers told us the path to the river, and the guy's like, "Well, how do you know that's the path to the river?" Well, my father told me, right? Or something like that. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but that's the way I kind of see it.
Yeah,
I
I
guess I
think
don't
that's better than like what I was thinking was like, oh, it's not a look at the trees argument, right? Because we've heard enough of those where it's like, okay, so like it's just saying that beauty couldn't exist without God is different from saying they can only find true beauty through God or something like that.
Yeah, it's like because there's subject like there's God's standard, but even God doesn't hold us to that type of standard because he knows we're imperfected, which is why we're given forgiveness. It's to those who like that have no forgiveness, like the hierarchy of celestial angelic beings, whatever you want to call them, right? That have this prior knowledge and interaction with God that we don't have. So this is why, again, if you're a Christian and then God says, "I know you not," it's not that God isn't aware of you. He doesn't know you ontologically because you don't have an identity within him. And because you don't have that identity, you're not of him. Yeah, sure, he's aware of you. He knows. He's omniscient, right? There's an awareness. He lets everything exist. Nothing goes by him because he's the ultimate orbiter around death, right? That's its tick-off point, right? If you want to say it like that. That's a leisure. That's a measure, and that's something that's tangible too. Just creepy.
Okay.
But, yeah.
I think it's interesting because I've been going to the Church of Latter-day Saints, and one of the things that they were talking about is that they believe that like we get our physical bodies back, after the rapture, we get our physical bodies back, and that God Himself has a physical body, right? And so there's like this emphasis on like the death and rebirth that's a little bit different from most Christian theology. So, there was like discussion on, well, does it matter if you get buried or cremated? And then it was kind of all very scientific. Well, it's like, no, because God has the power to reconstitute those bodies. He doesn't need the original parts, right? It doesn't matter. So
That's a hard argument. I tend to go on the whole original thing. Like, I'm adamantly against cremation because of it. Like, just I don't want to be burnt up anyway. Like, that's just the idea of that. And plus, in the ancient times, like, being burnt up, depending on your culture, wasn't a good thing. Like, that's like you're being burnt up. Like I said, in some cultures it's honorable, but yeah, I'd rather be buried. To be honest, it's weird.
see, when I was younger, I had like a big fear of burial, and I thought like it was like the ick factor. I was thinking like, well, what if you were still conscious for some period or something like that, and then you got like bugs and worms eating you and crawling through your body and stuff? Like that would be probably like I don't know if that'd be worse than burning. I don't, if
Well, the
you're
way I'd
conscious of
figure it, if you're conscious of it but you don't feel it, does it really matter?
Yeah, probably not.
Right? You're just watching these cool ass bugs eat you. I'd be like, fucking dope. Like, I'm stuck in this spot and I get to watch my body decay. That's so cool. Like, that's so meta. I want to see that happen, like in slow YouTube video.
Right.
Heck yeah, man. See a little squirrel just like eat my eyeball or something. Right? Oh, that'd be the shit.
For sure.
It's not that you're not engaging, but I think you're right in the sense of like, yeah, I disagree with premise two, because you're saying in the first premise that God is necessary, so you can't follow that up with He's not there in the next premise. He is necessary. But the way you explained it, you get
goes
into
in with-
sovereignty, maybe.
Well, yeah, it's all about His omniscience. By omniscience, He has to know that He's God. By
But this is-
there's
he's
no
questioning your. Okay, listen. He's questioning your epistemology, not God's, right? That's why he's saying you're not engaging. He wants to know how you know these things. He's not asking what God knows. So that might be.
Well,
I think
in
you-
that aspect, like, we know those things through God, through the Holy Spirit. I mean, it's the same representation of answer. Like,
I
what
think
other
you kind of
thing are
fell
we to
victim.
give? Go ahead.
I think you fall victim to his verbiage, man. That's all. Can you conceive of this or that? Doesn't necessarily mean a yes answer. Doesn't necessarily mean that you believe that that situation would be so.
That's true.
Yeah, I think Jay is going to circle back to this a little bit here, or maybe later. But it sounded like where you were going with that was that, like, that God is a necessary precondition for knowledge, right?
Sorry. Yeah. Well, He's the precondition for knowledge because he's the only thing that's uncreated.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's it's just a factor of. It's not even a factor of Himself. It's just an identity of category, uncreated, created, and it's just that if there's only one uncreated that did all the creating, then that's automatically that created thing. If it has thought, if it has awareness, if it has knowledge, which in the Bible says that God does, then it knows everything that goes on. There's nothing that doesn't go on that it doesn't know about. It has to. Otherwise, how could it not? Right? When someone makes a car, is there a part that they don't know about when making the car? Right? Oh, this random part just appeared. How did this part come into my design? I don't remember making this. This is insane. The car just made its something, right? So that's
Yeah. I mean, assuming that assuming that one being made the car, yeah, they would have to know all the constituent parts.
precisely, and that's another problem in with the. Then it goes into the many, but yeah.
True, but when we get that's
Are
true,
you
but
capable, are you capable of conceiving of that idea? Well, I'm capable of mentally assenting to the idea. That yeah, I can imagine it, but I don't think that would ever be the case.
right.
Precisely, yeah, that's where I was.
He's
aiming
playing
for.
with conception and hypotheticals, but when you take a hard position, which I think is the presuppositional position, it's you say no. Actually, I can't. On my worldview, I can't honestly conceptualize that because God is the necessary precondition for all
There you
reality.
go.
So, that's the answer.
Yeah, that's the best.
Totally off topic. So
How's that?
premise one is
Just to address
necessarily
this,
if God exists, God exists necessarily.
Comment in the side chat. I think I'm supposed to say E-I-E-O-O-O. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to say that. According to Mormonism, yes, God can and does pull his dick out, and he has a heavenly wife who he has intercourse with, and that's how we got. Yeah, I don't know, something like that. I don't fully understand that part of the theology, but I know it's in there, and yeah, God likes to pull his dick out.
God and the bride is just alchemaic cosmic talk. Cosmic alchemy. That's all that is. It's alchemy, communion of two to one.
Right.
It's wonderful.
Necessarily. That's saying that if your God exists, it has to be a necessary being. It can't be a brute fact or infinite regress. Premise two is possibly God doesn't exist, which is justified by the fact that myself and every other atheist and agnostic and most theists can imagine a world. In fact, the last theist as well could imagine a world with no God. So that's premise one and premise two are true. So the conclusion, therefore, God does not exist necessarily.
I got a question, guys. As I know there for about a month, he was talking about the quantum field is God, and I would just laugh all the way through that when I heard him say that. Is he still talking that, or has he given up the quantum field as being God yet?
Yeah, that reminds me of T-Jump saying that the moral particle is somewhere in the quantum field, will be discovered. It's like, dude, you can't.
So I think for atheists who make those types of arguments, right, like we was referencing T-Jump there, they're providing like a known unknown, like something that's not observable, but that we have evidence of, right, in some form or another, right? But it's like providing an alternative, so it's not meant to be taken literally. But I think they just want to put something in the place of saying, instead of saying I don't know to the answer to that question, they could just say, oh well, it's quantum mechanics, it's a quantum field, right? Like something like that. So.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant by like that's the same authority and power I meant by like death. It is something that seems to be derivative of what we come from, if I'm using the word right, because we stem from it. So it has power, like as an origin standpoint. Yeah, it exists as that. This is the far as we can conceptualize this power. But death, as far as we know, is another power because we either conceive that there's something after death by special revelation, or we think about it, or we just don't know. And that's kind of been the human conundrum about, because that's a power that we all face, and we see things get entangled with this concept of what we call death, right? And that's what I mean by like it's a god. It doesn't have to want. It doesn't need to be worshipped. It doesn't have to be alive.
Yeah, I'm very interested too in it. Certain people have this concept of annihilation, where they say that like it's not like the idea of hell where it's like eternal conscious torment, but the soul still survives, right? But absolute annihilation, where you cease to have experience, is seen as being like the actual worst possible outcome. Um, No banning Tog. He's a guest here. You guys.
Can't make an argument from an empirical position about what may be discovered. And that then everything else collapses once that collapses, because he has no framework to say, well, I think this is the case and you ought to listen to me and all that, because he's abandoned ethics. He has no idea where they come from. He puts himself back into subjectivity. But also right here, Tog, this gets into what I've said about going into critiquing and arguments without a solid position. This is a good example of that, because you're walking into a place where he's providing an argument for you and getting you to agree with it. This is essentially his argument that he wants you to agree to. This is not your actual position.
Yeah.
Right.
Follows.
Yeah, I still don't see how I'm not engaging within the first premise. There has to be a god to be necessary, and if we're
No.
considering that
You
God
can have
has
other
knowledge,
necessary. There's other necessary being candidates.
yeah, he would still have knowledge of himself, though, would he not?
Right there. When an empiricist makes a claim about other necessary being candidates, go, wow. Why don't you go ahead and tell me about that? How you gathered that knowledge of that being the case in reality?
Yeah.
Right. Where's the demonstration of it?
Crickets.
Now I'm not quite clear on what he meant there. Whether he was talking about like the claims of other deities, or whether it was like that whole quantum field thing that Eric was going into earlier. What that was?
About other necessary being candidates?
Yeah.
I think so. I think it is just that. For example, I was thinking along the lines of like Christ claiming to be the Son of God. Well, what legitimacy does he have in that claim, right? Well, you could say that God isn't a thing or is a thing. What gives you the right to say you're his? You're from that, right? That's like someone saying, I'm from famous family name, a Rothschild. I'm from the Rothschilds, right? I'm an heir to the fortune, and if there is one, right? Well, how do you prove that, right? Do your blood, whatnot, and like so. I think that goes into the necessary being of there could be. It's like the same thing the Jews say about Christ. Christ isn't the Messiah. There's other necessary candidates that can exist. The Messiah is still to come. I think that's all that is whether you can identify the truth of the claim, right? I am who I say I am, or not, and that's it. So, can the quantum field identify itself as the end-all be-all? No, because it's only pointing to the origin, not the end. Like, that's the thing you needed to connect about this necessary being is this necessary being, if it has origin for necessity, that's fine and dandy. But does it have the same thing with the end? God has both. He's at both spectrum. And that's the difference between these two powers of death and the quantum, unless you're saying somehow the quantum causes the death. But you got to make that actualize, right? We observe it, but how does it all connect? And that's still the same question of how did God create the world and whatnot? Like, it's on par in the same level, my experience, I guess.
Yeah, and I think if you were to go like all the way down the rabbit hole with like Darth Dawkins or somebody like that, like he would add more attributes in there. So there could be more than one necessary being, but only one ultimate being, right? Like something like that.
Say that again. Sorry.
Oh, that there. I was saying that like the meta argument there would be to add more attributes. So you could say that that a thing could be necessary but not ultimate. So you would need a thing that is both ultimate and necessary.
Right. So like, yeah, precisely because quantum, that's necessary for our origin, right? Without it, we wouldn't be here. But it's not. It doesn't. It's not that ultimate. It's just a factoid or whatever. But God would be that the ultimate. But that's what I say by, he's not wrong in that, and I can grant him that. But it's not enough, if you get what I'm saying. It's enough to push you through the door of this is how we got here, but it doesn't complete the circle, if that makes sense. And that seems like the circle needs to be squared off.
Love me some square circles.
That's not relevant to the argument at all. I don't see how it would be relevant to the argument at all.
Yeah, he brought it up in the first place, right? He was like, "Oh, there's other." Well, why we even bring up that there's other things to lean on, right? If we're talking about my whole thing, and like, yeah, I guess and then that, like, you get what I'm saying?
Well, yeah,
Still,
he's
like,
talking
he
about
brought
his.
it up.
He's talking about his thing, actually getting you to agree to it. That's what he's basically doing. And you're trying to wiggle out of his framework. It's no, I don't see what you're doing there. You don't need to wiggle away from my framework, accept my framework. But the problem, I think, is that you don't have a concrete framework, so to speak. Is that fair?
Potentially, yeah. I get what you mean by concrete, yeah.
Like a hard position. Like it's not
Yeah.
if God is the necessary precondition. The position is God is the necessary precondition. It's not a questionable stance.
Well, yeah, that's why I usually try to get into God's self knowledge. Because
Well, then it's going away from you making an argument and your epistemology into explaining. Well, in a sense, you're still within epistemology because you're talking about God, but talking about God's knowledge to an atheist, there might be a disconnect.
that's what I'm saying. They can disconnect it on.
Welcome to James Apperson. Appersona non grata says, I missed the first one here. It's a shame when we don't really know what is necessary, nor that humans can account for ultimate. Yeah. And he said, I recognize JG. He is a bad faith actor, but then again, aren't they all? Well, some are worse than others. I've heard conversations go both ways on this channel. So, Tog said, "Is it necessary for me to drink my own urine? No, but it's sterile and I like the taste." It's terrible.
I love that quote. Well, he said, "Is it necessary?" It made me think of that. I love that quote from Dodgeball. It's a good movie.
Oh, welcome in, James.
Hey there, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
we got a little rumble there, but
Oh, sorry. How about now?
yeah, you're good.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah, JG and I used to talk a few years back. And I remember he was talking some shit about me on his channel. And it was just patently false gossip that he was spreading about me. And so he ended up on Answers in Atheism. He because they lock horns once in a while, or at least they used to. And I asked him directly, did I ever actually say any of those things? And he said, no, you never did. Right? So he admitted that I hadn't said any of the things he accused me of saying. But he never apologized for the fact that he was lying about me at his channel. And ever since then, like every time he just shows up, like I don't even bother talking to him. Like I haven't really been active in Mike's channel for a while now. I was on his channel briefly the other day, but like I didn't get a chance to say anything because there was too many people. But
Right.
In fact, man, I can't remember who the other guy was. Might have been Kurt. No, I was on a different panel with Kurt the other day. Now I can't remember where. Gosh darn it. I'm too many places, I tell you.
It's hard to keep track.
But yeah, go ahead.
So I'm wondering though,
Go ahead.
with your experience with JG, was it an issue where was he spreading personal falsehoods about things that you said, or was it like an issue of strawmanning an argument?
Oh, no, personal falsehoods. He accused me
Okay.
of saying some outrageous things that I
Okay.
absolutely never said. And so when I called him out on Mike's channel, he admitted I never said any of that stuff. And then he just moved on like it's not a big deal that he got caught lying about me.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a character assassination, man.
that's what it
I don't care
was.
for that.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Cowabunga. I see. I know who this is, but Nymphaeum Vox. Our dying sun, right? That's how I knew you before. Like, I recognize the avatar over here.
And
Hey,
haters.
welcome, Skeptic Philosophy.
Connected all they want. That's their issue, but I'm not. I
Well,
don't
you
think
can't.
I was.
How do you
I'm far
move
from the
forward?
argument.
What I'm saying is, how do you move forward with that in your favor? You know what I mean? Because they're asking how you know things. And I'm saying there's an easier way to do this because they want to know how you know things and how you can justify things. But ultimately, their position won't let them know things or justify things. And when you learn how to navigate that way, it becomes easier and easier because any question they have, well, you refer to the scriptures in your knowledge of a personal God. But then when you ask them similar questions, they're pulling answers out of the ether.
Jeez.
That's actually something I was going to say.
Go ahead. You can comment on that if you want to before I do.
No, you can go ahead, James. That was from the. We're talking to Noel, but he was also in the conversation. So
Yeah, I see that. So
Yeah.
it's just so ridiculous that that the only way somebody can claim that they have access to absolute or even any knowledge at all is if they first assume God. Well, now this puts them on an even playing field with Muslims, including Islamic jihadists and Jehovah's Witnesses and Roman Catholics and Hindus. Right? They haven't really solved anything. It's not like they've managed to secure the place on the top of the epistemological totem pole, right? And in the meantime, all I have to do is say, well, I ground my epistemology in SpongeBob, the Eternal Hall Monitor, right? It's just such a nonsense card that they get to write this I win card in crayon and say, if you don't have one, you don't win. You don't even get to play. And I'm
Well,
like,
I have a question.
Go on.
So, like, it's a decent one, I think. How do you get to SpongeBob as an ultimate when SpongeBob itself is a created concept? Like, can you find a way to where SpongeBob existed before the Earth existed? In that
Well,
case?
sure. So when we look back at like the biblical God and we consult with scholars, including some scholars who are Christians, right? And so they've grounded their epistemology. They talk about a history where we really know like that the idea of Yahweh is a developed concept, that this is not the original theology. This is not the original spiritual or cosmic paradigm for humans to talk about reality. It's something that came about pretty late in human history. And so in the same way that we know Superman isn't real because we know something about the people that created him. We know something about when and why and how they created him. Well, we know just as much about when, why, how, and who created Yahweh as this composite godly character. And so, yeah, SpongeBob's the same way, right? When we think about how people, the ideas that they created Yahweh with, they created him with ideas that came from other older religions and cultures. And so the idea is that in order to justify that, you have to like make up some fancy story, like maybe God or maybe Satan snuck into God's bedroom when God wasn't looking, read God's diary, saw what God's grand plan was, and then came down here and created a whole bunch of false religions before God could create the real one. And just to make it look like God's real religion was borrowing off of older ideas. Well, we can say the same thing about SpongeBob, that even though it was fairly late in human history that somebody presented us with the concept of SpongeBob, the Eternal Hall Monitor, doesn't change the fact that just maybe Squidward, his nemesis, snuck into his pineapple one day.
Okay, so the only problem with that is you're switching the things. You're putting the fantastic into the claim of reality of those things actually existing in order for us. Like there has to be something to slip in there,
Well, I'm
and
doing
that's
the
what I'm
same.
saying. You're sneaking that in, but my claim is if you're sneaking that in, I'll agree with you because we have lineage to back up these claims.
Who's we?
Life. And if we have lineage to back up to the claims of God, I don't see how those lineage trace back to Superman or SpongeBob. That's all I'm saying. I want to agree with you, I just don't.
How old does the lineage have to be, right? And who's we? Are you a Christian?
Sure, yeah.
Sure, yeah. In other words, you're going to play one for the context of the conversation.
By all
No,
means,
Noel
yeah.
is a Christian, but I mean, I think you identified in this video as a Christian naturalist, right? Specifically,
Right.
I don't know if I don't think you changed your position there.
Right. So I was talking with somebody about this earlier in a completely different platform. That there's this thing where if somebody came out of their tent and just one day with their they're all sweaty and gritty like anybody else in the desert, right? And they go, "Good news, everybody! I just had a private conversation with the creator of the universe, and he wants me to tell you some stuff because some things are going to change around here. It's going to coincidentally benefit me, but ignore that part, right?" We would immediately recognize that. So if the atheist, the Christian, and the Muslim and the Hindu all heard this happen, none of us would take it seriously. We'd be, get the hell out of here. Go take your meds, right? But because it happened a long time ago with various people that we have rumors and legends about, it's this thing in the human psyche where when we have this, you've seen the digital filters like sepia, right? Or paper that's printed to look all kind of aged and ancient with this yellow hue to it. There's something about the human psyche that naturally romanticizes the past to where it's mysterious and it's spooky, right? And so if we hear somebody thousands of years ago that said exactly that thing when he came out of his tent, all of a sudden, well, maybe he knows something that we don't. We should listen, right? And so I don't give that way, but I understand how it works psychologically for people that are tempted to give that kind of a thing way. And so it doesn't matter to me that because it happened a long time ago, that now there is a lineage of people who bought into the idea and that somehow makes it credible or gives it weight. Because I'm looking at that and I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
I mean, the people are there.
How's it going, Julie?
I like the way this is going, but we'll take a second to welcome Robert, Skeptic Philosophy. How you doing?
Hey, quite well, man. It looks like y'all are making a video of someone making a video of another video.
Yeah, and on the comments, it's a triple meta-analysis.
Yeah.
And so the message of the day is don't do a triple meta-analysis unless you want to break your brain.
Yeah. I see Kurt is in the original conversation here. I'm not sure who the other person other than Kurt or Alan, however you know him, is in the original
JL.
Conversation. And JL's no, that's just a picture that what's his name? Taco's been running. I don't know if it's not actually JL.
Oh, it's not really him. Okay.
No, that's an AI image of JL, and Taco has been putting it up on there just to aggravate JL. And then the top one, it looks like, is a recording that, oh shit, this is another layer thick. So the top is a recording, it looks like, if you see JL's picture above, or his AI image, above that, it looks like they're playing another recording. So I don't know if that's paused in the video. Don't know.
And Nymphaeum Vox, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, it says there's a correlation between the advent of writing and the advent of patriarchy and analytical thought. We dismantle the image and fractured thought, dismissing the image. And I'm kind of like, my brain's a little broken on that one too.
That's deep ass.
Very deep. So looking at that
Tim Minchin says that. That's deep ass, man. That's deep ass.
It is.
Is this like pixelation? Like we break it down and there's like 1,000 other images within the image or something like that?
But
I think we have.
Go ahead.
Good.
We
have some pretty good reasons of. I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep going because at this point we're just going to keep doing the thing. Yeah. That we have this. We have a lot of historicity of like how the different components came about, and some of them are fairly speculative, and some of them they're more grounded. Like when we have the flood stories, and we see like these comparative things with the flood stories that they're taking so much of something that we already know how to date as older than the flood story that we have in the Hebrew text. These stories are clearly older in every facet. They date them as older, and there are little parts of them that are constantly stolen from. I say stolen. It's just a tradition of how that thing. Oh, this is known to be that way, and then we have a lot of word of mouth that keeps traveling. So when you look at like flood stories, or you look at like even the creation stories that we have from the Hebrew or the Greek, we have this ex nihilo ideal, or this pre-ex nihilo ideal, that nothing comes from nothing, right? So we see when we have every single creationist story of every religion has something coming from something that already is. And you don't even get an exception of that in the Bible. Like when God in the Bible creates, there's already, the water is already there. So there's substance that's already present. This was very much already a tradition of the time. So, and then when he creates the person, he creates man and woman. Well, he creates them from something that's already there. He creates the woman from something that's already there. But then when we hear modern Christians talk about the subject, they're like, oh, God created from nothing. When the oldest texts never even suggested that, because they were just modeling the ideals of religion that were already present in the time. And they just didn't think that nothing came from nothing. So it's something that now we've recreated it, because that makes more sense for an all power for being, that there has to be this first cause thing that we get into all the time. But that's not how they thought back then.
Right.
No, I even say this in the video that it's like God's doing a I can't pronunciate it, scouring moment, like with water. He's reflecting himself and looking inward to the deep, and that is creation, because it is the reflection of. He's having a ritualized moment of identity, recognizing self, and like it goes back into the I am who I am, and then the coming of Christ, and that tying into things. And
so you think the water's metaphor?
No, I think the waters is what God is using to reveal himself. Like it is like, that's how do you look at else? Do you know yourself? You look into your reflection. What else are you gonna see? Like, and that's like, and that's the deep, right? And that's kind of symbolic of also the chaotic waters. So why is God looking for himself through the midst of chaos? And and can he find himself in all that chaos? I guess is a way to see it.
I mean, that's the only place a chaotic being could find himself, is in all the chaos.
Do we have different definitions of metaphor, or is that not a metaphor?
I mean, it sounds like Narcissus to me, the story of Narcissus.
No, but I'm saying you're still saying that the water is not actual physical water, that it's more that the story
Well,
is
no,
being
it has
told.
to be material, because we're material as we know flesh and blood. I just think God, whatever the spirit of God hovering is what we call a life and alive. That's the material in which we experience God. Like we experience God like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. Yeah, because we know how we live through oxygen and breathing and all that, and understand those concepts behind it. You get what I'm saying? Like we understand how we're alive, but I guess we're aware of it too, is what I should say, through the naturalistic processes.
It seems to me that like if the story was being kind of recreated presently with the new kind of Christian ontology, or the modern Christian ontology, that this would be a very different story than moving across the face of the waters, or creating Adam and Eve from the dust and from the rib. That it would be more so in line with the ideal of being created from nothing, that God spoke into the void of nothing, or something like this, and then things became, and material began to rumble, or something of this nature, because this seems to be the way that modern Christians define how, like, God created, there was once nothing but God, and that God spoke, and then these things came to be. But it's not how we get the depiction of the Bible. We get these physical objects, and it's not just the water, but we get these physical things that are already there. And Dan McClellan pointed out that the term that we use in the Hebrew that says in the beginning, that the original vocabulary in the Hebrew would mean of the set. So it would not mean in the beginning of, and then just that be an open thing. It would mean in the beginning of the creation or whatever the narrative is that we're starting to say. So there's just a little difference in the vocabulary. And that's why we have some more modern kind of scholar books that would say in the beginning of creation rather than in the beginning of, because it's talking about specifically in the beginning of this event, not that there wasn't things before it. And that's, I think that's evident in the Hebrew. So when they start with that in the beginning of, obviously material was already there because there's already water there.
Precisely,
I
yeah.
wonder just to try to, so for the other atheists in the room, so obviously it's me here too, but like, do you think with how enduring this mythology or these stories are, right, that at the base of it there may be some truth value to be extrapolated? People have just taken great liberties with those with whatever the historical recording or whatever might have been. Like, does that make sense?
James, I'll let you go on that. He asked for atheists in the room. Do you think there's value to it?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand. Are you asking? So you're asking if we think that the story is valuable?
Well, no. I'm saying if there may be some truth behind it, like at its core, like the flood myth, right? Because it has endured for so long.
Well, it could be that somebody had some flooding somewhere and managed to rescue their animals from the flood, and that the legends grow from the reports of it, and somebody makes it into like a moral tale for their religious culture, and then it perseveres because it's relevant to their cultural experience now, and then some other culture hears about it and they adapt it to their own purposes. And so, sure, I'm sure it had a kernel of truth somewhere. I think that that's always true, though. I think that every single cartoon character that's ever been created and every single fantasy narrative that's ever been drafted has been based on some kernel of the writer's experiences, observations, things that they've heard, things that they've seen, and then they just kind of mythologize it, right? They create a story with it that the story isn't literally true, but they're basing it on things that they've really seen and heard about in the real world.
You know, fiction is based in some reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it followed the way that you worded it a moment ago, though, was because it's been so persistent. And I don't think that a thing being persistent, that like it keeps going on or it's successful in the story in societies, I don't think that that's necessarily dependent on it being from an event that actually happened. That seems to be too, like, things can resonate. They can resonate, right, and not have that kernel of I don't want to say truth, but they don't have that kernel of that there's similar event, something like this happened. Like we can have a story about what the hell's the Armageddon one with Bruce Willis, with an asteroid coming in and it's going to kill society, and there's this end of the world narrative that we have to do this action that saves the whole world. Now, have we seen an event that is like this, that a single person is there in that moment, that all of the world depends on that person? We have not. That has not been a thing that exists to the best that we know. But does that resonate with people? Yeah, it resonates, even though it doesn't have a basis. And I just wanted to point that out.
Right. No, I understand that. That's absolutely not what I meant, though, right? I'm just saying that it probably had a kernel of truth to the original version of the story. And the reason that it persisted is because it was, people appreciate it in the context that it was given to them, because the story is told in a larger than life way as a fictional narrative to convey moral ideals and to somehow be relevant to local cultural identity, so that the story is woven around the event. And it's the fictional elements of the story that make them powerful, that make them relevant to people's lives, because it borrows from cultural tropes that they're familiar with, and it talks about or maps onto the struggles that they've had in their own lives. And so because it becomes relevant to these people's own journey, it becomes durable in that way, and that they tell their children who tell their children, and for this reason it persists.
Yeah, and I just want to point out something that this one guy said in there, that baptism is symbolic for a reason. I think that baptism is one of the greatest examples of kind of the symbology that resonates. The whole ideal of baptism is to be born again. This whole ideal that all things are made new, that there's the before this thing and after this thing kind of symbology that is attached to it. And it's an accepting that there was the world that we had before, and now we're coming into a new a new thing, and that's kind of what that's why it's not just that it's the baptism. It's also associated with birth, just vocally. Just we even the religions that had baptism before Christianity, this was an ideal of a rebirth. You know,
Right. Yeah.
that it's a starting new.
Just real quickly, I want to hit on because we got a few comments here from Nymphaeum said we had an intuitive understanding about the word, whereas now we rely to writing and to legitimize beliefs that are actually contrary to nature. And then asked if we're familiar with the bicameral mentality theory, which I kind of know what those words mean, but I don't know the theory particular. Do you guys know that?
Nope.
Okay, something we'll have to look up. And then said, I think that the Genesis story was never meant to be literal or even taken seriously. Ancient thought works a lot on analogies, not descriptions. And the water there is just a Tiamat. I'm not sure what that means.
It's a chaos goddess,
Okay.
which could be relevant to a dead wife and God trying to bring her back to life. But let's not go into that.
Oh, poor Asherah.
And he said, any story, it is written to have value in the time that it is written for that time. I think I agree with that.
Yeah, I definitely
Although I
agree
could
with
see
that.
how,
It may be
you know,
less relevant later.
yeah, it might be less relevant, but people still somehow relate. And I think people, like somebody said earlier, I don't know if it was you or James that was talking about like romanticizing that like the ancestor or whatever, the experiences of ancestors. Okay, and then a little bit of back and forth there in the side chat. But I think, yeah, that was it. Do you guys want to continue on with the triple meta, or did you want to respond to anything these guys said, Noel?
No, I'm fine.
All right. So just anybody say pause at any time. We'll
Yeah.
look into it.
To say about the quantum field is that
Yeah.
they refer to the deep rather than spirit hovering above, right? That's calling everything into action.
Yeah.
The funny
It's
thing
so,
about the quantum field is that when Tacos says the quantum field, he's talking about the actual quantum field being the primary force behind everything that created everything. Now, the really funny thing about this is that I don't know if he knows this or not, but the force that he's talking about is like 14 different things. You've got an electromagnetic force field. You've got about 14 different force fields that are used. Gravity is one of the fields that he's saying is the primary force. So you've got the primary force. How is that the primary force of anything? When you've got to have the quantum, you've got to have the gravity field. You've got to have the gravity before you can have the gravity field. You've got to have the magnet, the electromagnet, before you have the electromagnetic force. But he's saying you have these forces. The forces are primary.
I unfortunately I feel like Eric is trying to parrot something that he's heard about quantum forces or quantum fields at some point, and he's not doing a great job at it. This doesn't really track with my understanding of like the quantum mechanics or quantum fields.
Yeah, mine either. It's like he's saying that you have to have the quantum to have the field. He's comparing it to the same way that you have to have the gravity to have the gravity field, right? It just seems like what he's suggesting.
Yeah. What it really breaks. Oh, go ahead, James.
I was gonna say, it sounds like gravity comes first, and then it generates a field. The quantum comes first, and then it generates a field. And I'm like, does it though? Like, I'm no physicist, so I guess I don't want to oversell this, but it didn't sound right to me. But even if it's
Yeah.
great, like, what's he even doing with it? I don't even know.
And I want to be clear, like all of these conversations, every single one of them, they overtly take on the A theory of time. They just overtly, when we're talking about like calls, because even when you do like, it's weird because people switch back and forth between like A theory and B theory of time, because when they say things like there is a thing that must necessarily be, like if you're talking about like the PSR model or things that affect the next thing and the kind of this chain reaction of things, the thing that was necessary to be in the A theory of time does not have to be anymore. If that makes sense. If there is a thing that started a state that thing had to necessarily be, and then that there's a state and that all these things are changing, in the A theory of time, that thing doesn't, it is not logically coherent that thing must still be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like to bring this into like our context, right? In the finite time scale of human time, we could say that a mother could die in childbirth, that child could survive, and that mother is not necessarily any longer in existence, right? Or not as a
Right.
living person anyway.
Right, and you can even talk about this as the thing that thing is necessarily must be. If it creates states and reality and whatever, however it happens, let's say that there's a thing that preceded the quantum field that brought the quantum field into be, and let's say that was some other field type or something which existed in some part of I don't even want to call it reality, but that is just a thing that brutally was, and that thing that brutally was, is it necessary that like you could have this reaction of, I don't know if you imagine like fire burning, like the new thing is consuming the old thing that is now, this is now the new state that is the quantum field. Does that mean that the old thing has to be? These are just changes in state. It doesn't mean that the old thing now has to still be. It could definitely not be the case in the A theory of time. Now, in the B theory of time, that's not the case.
Right.
The forces are not primary.
Right, like he's pointing to a set of forces that he doesn't understand and calling it ultimate, but there's a series of particulars going on there. He can't actually call it ultimate.
No, you can't. You got to call the gravity the ultimate. The gravity is the cause of the gravity field.
I think at that point though, that's where it gets weird, because it gets, whether you're looking about like how do I describe this, a set. So is it a complete set that makes up the whole, or are we looking for one thing that makes up the set? Because God is one thing that makes up the set, right?
Yeah, he's just saying
that's a thing.
Yeah, he's just saying the quantum field is God, but you've got all of these individual things within that quantum field that is creating that quantum field.
Okay, so can I this is where I think I agree with him in some sense. So what he might be saying in that, because you could argue that there's two defining gods at that point. There's the quantum field God, and that goes in by authority as things of like, let's say that by the command of God, it holds itself up together, right? It's doing it by the word of command. Well, the
Wait,
fact
hold
that
on,
it's holding up.
hold on a second. When you say you can argue and split up two gods, like, what are you talking about? Who
Oh,
can do
shoot,
that?
my bad. I'm talking about with death and the quantum field, because those are two extreme, the so-called observable things that we observe, and that's what they mean by God, is that
He doesn't have knowledge.
horizon.
He doesn't have knowledge to call anything quantum God, because he doesn't have a personal relationship that would reveal that knowledge from what he's calling the
Oh
quantum
my
field
God!
to
It's
him.
not. It's not
He
about.
he can't bridge that.
I was screaming on the inside. What? You don't need to have a personal relationship with things for it to be a god. Like, that's not a prerequisite. What are you talking about? Like, we don't have to actually know God's omniscience in order to know that there's a God. Like, even with that, come on, man.
Muddy it up a little bit. Muddy that water up a little.
Yeah, I'm confused. I'm sorry. Like, I just don't get it.
I stay confused in some of these conversations. I just stay confused because keep in mind, at the end of the day, like a personal relationship is motivating most of this. I mean, well, it is motivating. There is a sensation of a personal relationship and a desire for a personal relationship, and you can't have a personal relationship if this thing might not be true. So this thing, like, there are motivations that are clearly in here when we're talking about people that have personal relationships. And sometimes it's almost like the Freudian slip, if I dare say that, that like that personal relationship is the foundational motivation of this conversation. It just is the foundation. It is the ought that they want this relationship. And now everything they're defending and saying all of this to say that that relationship's not just with myself. It's not just in my head that there's a relationship. So I think that's almost like a Freudian slip that you're giving out your intentions of the foundation of your argument.
Right. Like that's a good example for that. Which is why I said they're the ultimatum of the other two. And he's like, well, what do you mean by that? Because he doesn't have a relationship with death, I guess, and that he hasn't seen the effects of it. That's why I keep saying you can observe it, right? It's something that affects us all, a lot of things, really. And that's what, like earlier in the conversation, I was trying to dig into them about that, and I wasn't having it because he kept bringing it back to the, I think, personal.
Yeah, and I noticed too, just an observation here that, and Jay brings this up later. I mean, both are really trying to just like help to like refine your arguments and kind of school you a little bit in precept apologetics, and just coming from different sides of the field. So, like when you think about it that way, like it can't be like when you're talking philosophy like this, like you kind of have to assume that everybody is taking a position they might not genuinely adhere to, like in everyday life, or you know what I mean, like there's some element of like deceptive play in there.
Well, isn't there always?
Yeah.
Honestly. But you know, when we talk about relationship, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, when we have relationships with real people in the world, we're collecting data all the time through our senses, right? Our brain generates what I would call like a 3D hologram that represents the person that's that's external to us. And so, in the most direct sense, we don't have a relationship with the other person. We have a relationship with what our mind generates to represent that other person through our experiences. And so we send out communication and they receive it, but then the brain translates that into a 3D hologram of us as well. And part of that is based on data and part of it is based on conjecture, and the brain can't tell the difference. Right? So there's always a significant difference. Sometimes important and sometimes not, but there's always a difference between the person as they mean to be communicated to the other, or as they see themselves and desire to be communicated or understood by the other, versus who we understand them to be, who we perceive them to be. There's always some kind of difference. And when it comes to this idea of God, it's not really God. If we assume that God exists in reality, it's, again, not directly God that somebody would have the experience with or the relationship to. They have the relationship to the idea of God that's within their own mind, and they've built that from data that they feel is reliable enough that they construct a good approximation of the other person that they think exists. But down here on planet Earth, we've got much more data to work with and much more ways of verifying that data than we do with something like God. And so when somebody talks about having a relationship with God, I think in a way that they're right. Even if God doesn't exist, they can have a relationship with God because they relate to the concept.
Phenomenal projection.
Absolutely.
So
Oh.
Sorry to interrupt. Okay, go ahead.
I was almost done. And so as I understand God, and I don't mean to be inflammatory with the point, I'm just sharing how it looks to me.
I understand.
God is an idea that is seeded into the mind by other humans, and it is cultivated within that soil as it grows into something that takes on a life of its own, somewhat metaphorically speaking. It sort of partitions the mind to where this emergent voice is actually a voice of their own. It's a voice within themselves, but they don't recognize it as themselves. They recognize it as an external voice, even though it's not an external voice. And so they have a relationship with them, with a partitioned part of their own psyche. And that voice is built partly, the personality, the DNA of it, the expression of it is built partly from their own lived experiences, but it's also built partly from the script, from the dialogue, from the characteristics, from the attitude that other people have fed into that psyche to build this, like build a God workshop kind of like thing that emerges. Now there could still be a real entity out there somewhere that could be called a god, right? And maybe that entity has provided some of the circulating ideas that go into the process, maybe, but it doesn't change the fact that what the people are really having a relationship with is this emergent phenomenon within their mind. The same as when we have a relationship with other people, we're only indirectly relating to those other people.
Right.
Perfectly
my question-
articulated.
Thank you.
My question was, do you think in the matters of like faith and belief, like those lines are almost interchangeable, but not, because someone can have belief, which is a type of relationship, but faith is a deeper, enveloped relationship in that, because, and again, the idea is, like you said, it is internal, because God is considered that of life. And since we are alive, how could we not have a relationship with ourselves being alive unless we are in fact dead already? And so that's kind of where I asked that, where does faith stand in belief? Do we believe that we are then not alive, or do we have faith that we are?
Can I just throw some clarity requests inside for the words and the terminologies that we're using? The only reason that I mention that is there seems to be this problem that we presently have about the word belief and faith, that we think of like belief to intrinsically have a term like trust couched inside of it. And I don't think the origin of this, even from the Greek, like when we had pistis that was used for belief, or the piste, I forget the form that like made it an object that we called faith. So you had one word that had a variation, that one was belief and one was faith, but then you had another Greek word that was just to hold it to be so. That's just like an opinion of that I accept, and that was doxa. So doxa and pistis was two different things. And sometimes we in modern times of vocabulary, we conflate the ideal of I hold this to be with I trust this, or I have some kind of emotional connotation that's built into it. And I think that's two separate things. Like for you to have faith in something, like faith starts with hope that you want that to be. And then there's this kind of that this is because of that, if that makes sense to you. So that's very different than I believe I left my keys on the key hook in the front room. I don't have any investment in it or whatnot. And I can't even say that I have trust in it, if that makes sense. I just believe that that's where I left them, if that makes sense.
Okay. So
No
like
investment.
the reason why I bring that up is because often salvation is pinned on belief and not faith. And faith is often a gift of the Spirit. So if it's a gift and not everyone receives a faith, then belief goes into that. This thing is something that, what am I to do with this, right? And I think a lot of people often are in that belief spectrum rather than given faith, because given faith is like I'd say is a fruit, but then in with that, some of that fruit goes into like long suffering. So what is met with that long suffering and all these fruits, right? And suffering doesn't have to be like in a torturistic way. You know, you go through, you benefit, and you overcome. So it's not like suffering back in the day was a bad term. It used to be a good thing to suffer through something, or just naturally suffer. Like we suffered a bad winter or something akin to that. Like you went through it to overcome it, as far as I understand. But that might be an etymological fallacy too by going to the origin. I recognize that as well.
Well, I don't hold any value in faith. I don't think it's a valuable thing for it to be a gift or whatever. I think it's demonstrably the case that if you use it towards another application, like in the sense that Hebrews uses it, that faith is the substance of things hoped for, that it's good to just believe a thing even though we don't have evidence. I don't think that it is good to believe a thing even though we don't have evidence. I don't accept that as virtuous or anything that's good. I think if a con man wants to create a tool, it's like a social construct tool, that's the kind of tool that he would use, that it's good to believe a thing even though you don't have faith. Because if you don't have evidence to show someone that something is true, then you talk up this construct that is Well, but believe in it even though you don't have evidence, this is a good thing. And that seems like that's a construct from a con man that says that's good, and that's not the same as hope. So like you could hope for
Right.
something and it inspires you to do, but it doesn't mean that you believe that it is going to be the case. So I don't
Right.
think that faith is virtuous, and I don't think you can even apply it to anything. Like if I have faith in Zeus, is that a good thing? I don't think the average person would say.
Well, I
it
have
is.
faith in my wife, so I think that's kind of in the context in which I mean it
Okay.
with, like that. So that's what I forgot to say. I'm not meaning it in like a biblical context. I forgot to because I forgot. People always go to the Roman. I disagree with the Romans 8, right? And Romans 8 isn't the whole authority of the Bible. So I'm not worried about what that verse says.
Well, I was
particularly
referring to Hebrews
about
11,
that.
not the Romans 8 one. But
Oh,
I
sorry.
also think just
Oh, I
just
said
to
one thing.
interject a little bit, there was the analogy used there with the car, and well, I think it was the car keys in this instance, but I've heard it used with the car. You say, well, if you have the keys, you have kind of faith that your car is going to start in the morning, but we also have contingencies if the car doesn't start. Maybe we have a jumper cables or a spare battery, whatever the case may be, right? We have contingencies for these things, and I think it works the same way in religious circles, right? Because if it's the case that you didn't get that job you were hoping for, you have this contingency. You can pray, you can go to somebody in the church. There are all these contingencies if that thing doesn't work out to eventually make it happen, right? So it's not true faith. And I think like true faith in that way is like analogous to going out in the ocean with a boat with no oars. Like that would be true faith.
It'd be a bad idea.
It'd be a bad
Yeah.
idea. But I get to work every day like 15 minutes early, and the reason that I get to work every day 15 minutes early is because I don't like to use the word faith, but we do this term like trust, that we trust our car will start. Well, I don't entirely trust that it will. It may very well be the case that it don't. It seems to be very normal and repetitive, and we get this through a pattern of continuation that it has done it, over and over. But it still may be the case that I try to turn the car on tomorrow and it doesn't start, and I need it jumped off, or I get out there and my tire's flat or anything else. Because it has not been happening is why I get to work 15 minutes early. But I'm ready for that to always happen and still acquire my goal because I can get started a little earlier.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I would add to the faith discussion, it's kind of like a fuzzy word. Like I've heard Christians use it a bunch of different ways, and so I don't ever want to tell the Christian what they have to mean by it, right? But when I hear the word faith in the religious context, how can I put this? It's like they have evidence, and I think it's important to understand the word evidence for the conversation about faith, right? If there's a snow-covered field and two men are in that field, and they see a single set of hoof prints in the snow, they follow it to a river, and the hoof prints end. There is no animal anywhere to be seen, but there's a river there, and so one of them speculates that it was a deer, and it wandered into the river, and it went either upstream or downstream. That's why there's no deer there. The other one, using the exact same evidence, the hoof prints in the snow, and the fact that when they arrive at the river, there's no deer or animal anywhere to be seen. Again, evidence. They think, oh, well, it was a pink, invisible flying reindeer, and the reason we can't see it is because it's invisible and it's hovering above us. And it fits the evidence, right? Because there's hoof prints in the snow, and there's no animal here to be seen. So both of them have evidence, and so I never want to tell a Christian that they don't have evidence, because they do. And then what faith is like you've got a destination, a conclusion that you want to arrive at, but the evidence doesn't get you all the way there. So faith is the leap that you take between however far the evidence gets you and where you want to go. Faith is that leap.
I like to
Yeah.
call that the
Go ahead.
ghost evidence. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, go
yeah,
ahead.
like it's like I was hoping you were gonna say ghost, say ghost, say ghost, and then you said that.
Ghost.
I'm like, that's kind of like a ghost. I'm like,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's literally like the ghost evidence is what I say, because you have it, but where's the actual, the body?
Right. So this is what I think of when I hear Christian use the word, but I still try to leave it open for them to renegotiate on what they mean, because they get to do that, right? I always feel like I need to let the speaker call dibs on what they mean by a word or a phrase instead of me telling them what they mean. And so this is just what I think of when I hear the word faith. But I think it's not always bad, right? Like if I tell my daughter that I have faith that she's definitely going to be accepted by a university she's applied to, well, I'm assigning confidence to myself. I have an idea in mind of what I hope will happen, and I'm giving myself to the hope, right? I'm just saying that I have faith that you'll get in, but I don't know it, right? This is why I use the word faith instead of knowledge, as Christopher Hitchens pointed out. It's called faith because it's not knowledge, right? And so there's all kinds of things that a university has to weigh before they decide who they're going to admit and who they don't. And you don't always know exactly what they're weighing or who they're weighing it against. And so when we say we have faith that they'll get into the university, we're just being encouraging and optimistic and hopeful. And we do have some evidence because we know that a child got great grades in high school and they're really active in their community. And if you were the admissions person, you would definitely want them, right? And so you have faith and you say, I have faith that you'll get into that college. You don't technically know it, and that's why we use the word faith.
I just wanted to point out there's a great quote that I love from a movie that I have heard many times. It's from Talladega Nights. Ricky Bobby's wife says, I do have faith in you, Ricky. I just know you're going to fail.
I love that movie. It's one of my favorites.
that's good.
Nice.
I think it makes a good point here. We equate faith with loyalty, and loyalty is a tricky and messy thing. And like with Tog and your wife, right? Like, I mean, the same thing. We all have to have some degree of faith, fidelity in our partners, right? Until we have evidence otherwise. And trust in people.
What are we gaining by not calling that trust? What are we gaining by just not calling that trust in them? Are we just making the words interchangeable? Is what? Because I would say that I have trust. I mean, I don't. I think that conflating faith with it, I don't understand why we would use the word that is not even normal, and we're using something that has all these religious ideals that are couched inside of it as well. So, I mean, I think when we say we trust something, that's pretty normal that we trust that based on the patterns that we've seen, like that more of what has already been observed will just continue, right? Or that so if they've showed themselves trustworthy, we think that's just going to continue. I don't know what faith is doing to the conversation.
So I'm thinking out loud about this, and I think that there might be a subtle implication in the word trust, because trust means that if a thing doesn't happen, you've been betrayed in some way. And so if I say that I trust my daughter will get into the university, what I mean is that I trust her that she'll get in, then if she doesn't get in, the implication here is that I feel like she's let me down in some way, and I don't want the word trust to carry or infuse that kind of baggage into the proposition. Whereas if I say that what I mean is I'm trusting the university or the college, well, why would I do that, right? Why would I make that investment in them when they haven't earned my trust? And so it just feels like if I use the word faith, then it's more of an open declaration of hope and optimism, with no expectation and no sense that somebody's letting me down or betraying me if it doesn't happen. But that's only the way that my mind associates the words, with subtle implications of nuance. But it might not be what somebody else thinks of when they use the word trust.
Yeah, I think we couch
I
a
definitely
lot
agree with that. I think trust to me implies there is some like prior knowledge, some precedent for me to trust this thing is going to happen, like with the car starting or something like that. Whereas faith, you really don't have like prior evidence. Like you may have been told to have faith in this thing, but you don't have evidence that it works. With trust, you have evidence that it works. So there's, I don't know if that's useful.
Yeah, you could look at it a lot of different, like, let's say I'm a new father, I'm about to be a new father, and I'm about to have a child. And experientially, I've never been in the situation where I have yet had a child. And there's all this anxiousness about, oh, well, could things go wrong? Could this, that, the other? Your wife's going into labor. And from an experiential side, can you say that you trust everything's going to be all right? Because you don't have a base, like you personally yourself have never had a child, or you've never had your wife go through these things. So would you even use the term trust? But even in the sense of the hospital tells you, we've delivered literally millions of babies, that this is very normal. And in that sense, that we trust that this is going to basically go the way that they've delivered. 99.9% of all the children have been delivered fine. So do we trust that that's just going to be a continuation? I don't know. I think we couch a lot of things in certain words, and I've seen this happen to the degree that it changes the definition of the word. Even it shifts it a little. And one that I see happens a lot is like the word rest. Because now we'll hear atheists that'll argue with theists that say, well, why would God need to rest? But rest originally didn't have a connotation of being tired. There was nothing connected to the ideal of rest and tired. Like an object could be at rest. It just means that it was doing action and now it's not doing action. And then you have writers like Shakespeare in Macbeth and other plays that create a connection to the ideal of rest and being tired or being slumbersome. So now we couch the ideal of being tired in with rest, and the definition has kind of drifted a little. And it feels like what we're doing that with trust, that we don't want to say trust because it has these other connotations to it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And big welcome to Geo Sam. So reliability based on past experiences isn't faith and evidence gathered from past experience. Yeah, I see that
I'm a
too.
professional rambler. Y'all stop me. Just say, Robert, shut up.
No, it's great. It's all good things. Yeah, I've often asked myself that as well, and like, why is it? So why is it that because God rested supposedly on the Sabbath, why is it that we ought to do that? Why is that in the commandments? Like, as far as following on a tradition, or the Mormons would say, well, that's the day that you go and do worship, right? Like, so they all have some explanation for it that is it's extra. It's not included in the text, right? There is an explanation. They just say do it. Right? And we'll
So
say, well, why would we do that?
My theory. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's it.
My theory about that is the high priest was tired of working all damn week. And he's like, if I tell everybody I need the day off, I'm going to seem like the slacker in the village. Why don't I tell everybody it's God's day off, and we should take that day off to honor him? People are like, okay, yeah, we'll see if they buy it.
Yeah, because the early capitalists, they'd just work us all through the week if they could, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you consider what was happening between all the other nations, they would have 12-day work days, and then you have like maybe 1 or 2 days off, and then you work another 12 days or something like that. So it would be horrendous with the whole labor laws. I think it's just into that.
Yeah, that could be. So I'm thinking, before we move on, one more thought about faith versus trust. And I don't think a dictionary is going to support me on this. It's just it's just the implication or the nuances that my brain associates with the concept. It seems like trust is about the investments that have been made so far into a relationship, whereas faith is about the investment you're trying to make moving forward. You're putting it into the future of the relationship, where you're declaring an intent to make an investment, an emotional investment that speaks to how you feel about the proposition or the person. To say, I'm no matter, here's where we're at right now, and I'm placing, right? We use that phrase, placing faith in someone, right? It's this idea of making an emotional and personal investment to a future paradigm that you would experience with them. And maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe that's just the way that my brain associates word meanings. But it as I really try to look at it, it feels like that's in there somewhere.
Well put.
And make an argument about that. He can't actually do that, but he wants you to buy that.
I don't think it's about like I don't know if it may or may not. You can correct me. I don't know if it goes into a personal relationship, because again, it's like saying because these things don't want anything.
Okay.
They're not trying to be revealed, right? These things are just apparent. They are there. And that's kind of the point, is like these things are there. They're idols. Yeah, that's kind of the same scenario, is that they're idols, but they are tangible things that exist in our reality.
Well, he's not talking about tangible things when he's talking about the quantum field, is he? He's not observing the quantum field and extracting data. He's just pointing to it and saying, that's my answer.
And are you also suggesting that God does not want a personal relationship?
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's no. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, think of it back to powers and principles. If powers and principles can also be demons and gods and things like that, then that's what they're referring to in the same powers and principles. These things are powers. They're gods, and the authority sense, and not authority that they actually demand things, but in the presence that in which they are. So death is a presence, but it's not, it's you can't talk to it, whatever, right? But it's still something that like, again, people will do. That's why I was talking about when I said that earlier about it being a god. It's a false. Which is why I said because God has power. He commanded the quantum field in order to do whatever it is it's doing, and death, that he had power over it. God sustains both these things, and that's something that they are subject to. But without God, they are still God. Like, if God doesn't exist, there's still powers and principles that are at play that we fight among in flesh and blood and in our
As a
court.
Christian, how do you know what happens when God doesn't exist? I don't understand that.
Through his knowledge, I don't know. I can't say that, man. That's
No,
a
I
weird
don't-
one.
What's the answer?
Through my upbringing, I guess. I don't know. I that's the only thing I could say, I guess.
So
my
as a Christian
experience
who
on the earth.
as a Christian who believes that God is the starting point of all reality, you can also say that there can be a world without God. I don't understand that.
Well, this goes back to that idea. If there was a godless origin, but God can actually become an emergent prop, like if there is a God because he is emerging, then God does exist because he's emerging or will emerge, which goes back into the whole second coming thing. God does show up again to show whoever is there who believes them. Yeah, hey, I'm here. This is that's kind of the gist of it. So either way, there's an emergent property still coming of God, even though he's emerging within his creation through the Holy Spirit already. Right. And then that's what I'm saying. I'm saying in the atheist framework, they don't think that God exists. But that doesn't take away the fact that God can emerge from the godless origin.
Mind if I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Well, as a Christian, I don't know where you may think we are in the Bible, in God's timing. But as a Christian, when you look out on the world, when you look out on our nation, when you look out on television, whatever's going on in the world, what do you think is the most important message we have?
It's just truth.
I mean, I can say
Like,
something
that's
about
it. Like,
that.
if God doesn't exist, there's nothing. If Christ didn't die, there's nothing. We're just cos.
I mean, it depends on who you ask, but I
Good
think
place to stop.
I think the most important message that I've ever heard is that you should always wear underwear before zipping up a metal zipper. Like, I can't think of a more important message I've ever heard.
Valid. No, this gets into value sets. Like, is there still value? Do we still hold value if we don't believe that there's a thing? And that's what I don't understand. That like everything seems to, from many theists and not all theists, but everything seems to hinge on the idea that if God isn't real, then our value sets, that they're not meaningful. And meaningful in what sense? Does it mean that the value sets go away? If there isn't this thing, I mean, do you still value? Is it like as if you thought, okay, maybe there isn't a God, does that mean you just don't love your wife anymore, or you don't love your kids, or the like value systems just vanish? Or is it the case that you hold your internal ought, that you have the value that you're bringing to the set, and you want certain outcomes? And that's just where I think atheists are, that there's just things that we just do value. And if we value life, if we value friendship, we value interacting in this reality, and we have kids and we want to have grandkids, that's just, there's a value there. It doesn't need to be hinged on, but there's this thing that must exist. And if it doesn't exist, then these values don't mean anything.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
And
I tend to. Go ahead. Sorry.
I would expect theists to get their value from the same place, honestly, right? They have emotional experiences, they have personal experiences and connections, and things are meaningful to them and important to them because of the consequences of not having them or the benefits of having them. And it just seems like that God kind of comes in as an idea later, where they kind of retroactively attach it to the things that they already care about. Like, I don't think that that concepts and values emerge within the mind of a theist the same way that JG thinks they emerge in the mind of a theist. I think that they emerge the same way that they emerge. They happen the same way for atheists.
Well, that gets back to what you were talking about, like the God character that's inside of the mind. Is this just an accumulation of all those things which we value? Like, because you can build that God character in your mind, and that's the God that you know experientially, that you interact with, and that's how you define what God is. Is that mind-dependent one? Is that you taking everything that you have value in and just poking it inside of that to say, and you know what's crazy is that a person that wrote on this, and I generally don't think a lot of them, but that's Anton Tuvey or whatever the hell his name was, that wrote the Satanist book that was very satirical and whatnot. Anton LaVey, there you go. The idea, he says that God is a benevolent and stabilizing force. That God is a thing that we need to stabilize ourselves and say, this is everything that I take that is good and right and just, and we couch it all into one ideal, and we have a bundle. And even when we think about doing something wrong, we kind of have this rock or this bundle that we look back and say, that's against the principles and the ideal of that benevolent and stabilizing force, if that makes sense. So we say, well, I won't do that because, my ideal of God, that wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be conducive. It wouldn't be coherent with what that ideal is. So, and I think with us, we just don't have a solidified personage that we assign it to. There's just more of we try to create these rule sets, and we say, that's against what I would think would be right. If everyone was to do that action, that there would be absolute chaos, and I value things, so I wouldn't do that. I think that's more where we're left, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think so too. But I would add that I kind of have this superimposed, this ghost image or a conceptual image of the ideal person, right? Because I've noticed throughout my journey certain moments where certain people speak with such poise, such dignity, right, and such coherence. They're logical and they're ethical and they're so impressive, and I'm moved by that. And it's a little moment here from this person and a different moment over here from that person. And so I've been accumulating all these things in my box of wondrous moments from my experiences with other humans, which I take it out and shake it once in a while to remind me that it's not empty, because sometimes it gets hard to remember that people aren't all bad all the time sometimes. And so I've got this, I've built this kind of an ideal person, not a perfect person, but whenever I'm at this moment where I'm not sure how to be my best self, right? I'm not sure what to anchor myself in because I've got conflicting emotions and conflicting investments. Then I think, okay, what would this ideal person say? What would this really mature, really composed, really level-headed, emotionally well-regulated, thoughtful, responsible person, what would they say? And so that's my version of what would Jesus do, but it's not Jesus, right? It's this accumulation of ideas that I've been impressed by. And so it kind of does that same function for me.
And that kind of reminds me of Nietzsche's conception of the Übermensch, right? Somebody who is exceedingly strong and wise and magnanimous, and has all of those qualities that most people would like to have in an ideal situation. I apologize for my brief absence there. I'm dealing with a 4-year-old he's on a tantrum, but I'll
make you feel good and bad about it at the same time by saying we didn't even notice you were gone, man.
Hey, I want to say you can
saw King Bone in the chat. Welcome, King Bone, and Brojo's 420 Cafe down there. Good to see you guys. Go ahead, Robert.
Hey, I think you can create characters that just personify all of the characters or embody the vast majority of characters that you see as virtuous. And I played with this ideal a while back, and I was actually going to write a book on it. But I come to the quick conclusion that I don't own the copyrights on the characters. They're already well-known characters, and I couldn't do the thing. But I iconicized 3 individual people that are just they are the narrative of behaviors in which we should embody. And you can take somebody and I tried to get a very vast variety of people, and I took the fictional characters, all fictional characters. Jean-Luc Picard character, Iroh from the Avatar, and John Boy from the Waltons. And the ideal was that they embody like everything that is virtuous, like that of what we would normally call virtuous in almost any given situation. And you could build the what would Jesus do model with these three kind of people in terms of Iroh, Jean-Luc, and there's someone who they embody what we would generally call as virtuous, and just say that these is the model of what I would. That is the baseline of the behavior in which I want to exhibit.
Yeah, exactly. It was a shame you couldn't write that. I would love to have read it. I mean, you still
I
technically
don't know the
could.
characters. I mean, yeah, but Jean-Luc is. These are obviously already known, but that's the only reason that it works is because these are already known characters that people have already developed admirations for.
Yeah.
I think there's something important in that, because in that goes in with identity, right? And we can find ourselves in that. And that's kind of like where we're made in the image of God, right? If we identify with that, then our perception of what we experience God when he's absent is blurred. And so that diminishes our relationship in faith, because naturally, if you don't have trust and believe something's not there for you, how can you count on it for anything? And there's nothing you can do to gain that trust, because you have to backwards it. You have to find the identity before you build the trust of it. And if you can't find identity, like you said, you can't go to the Iroh and everyone else in order to lean on for inspiration, because you identify in with that as well. That's kind of like, I think, why Christians, like, they identify with this image in some way, and a lot of atheists have as well. But what keeps us on the playing field? I often say this, like, what keeps us drawing back to these questions of God instead of just moving on into those value systems and upholding those value systems? And I guess in some way it became political. So now it's like this, it literally took over the world instead of just fading away. This identity has kept up, and this, what's worse, if it's fake, everyone's living underneath this fake identity, and playing Cain, and hey, let's snap into reality, right? Let's stop, because these things matter more than building up this, but yet everything is built upon the mask, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a better world and believe the Iroh, these three characters are like they're the epitome of what we should be, and they still not be true. They're just fictional characters. But could you get a story that is emergent from these three characters, and it be extremely successful story and resonate with people in huge ways, and be a very successful model that inspires morality that just sweeps the country, and it still not be based on actual real people? And I think the reason that we know that this can be the case is because how these characters resonate with us in certain scenes. And we see these in movies, and you could think of this in terms of stories just being told, whether it was old stories of Achilles or different characters. These stories just like giantly resonate with people. So I think it can resonate with you and affect your life. Doesn't need to be real. That having been said, I enjoyed thank you so much, Trusted, for having me on. I am fixing to bail. I'll listen to y'all, but I'm fixing to eat some food while I eat. While I jump off of here. Y'all take care.
Thank you, Robert.
Take care,
Great as always.
Later here.
There's only one thing I don't like about Robert.
Uh-oh.
They're smarter than me, and it pisses me off. They need to cut that the hell out right now.
I thought we were throwing shade here. I was like, where's the...
Well, that is my shame.
Thank you
Take
for coming
that,
by,
Robert. Take that, you bastard.
All right. Yeah, we're going on almost 2 hours here, and I'm trying to get this kid to stop freaking out. So...
Do you need to go?
All right. I don't think I do. I think I can get this solved in a minute or two. Are you guys still in deep in conversation, or do you want to look at a little more of this video?
Yeah, go ahead.
This
Well,
is pretty
actually,
much all I
yeah,
had planned for.
I'm actually going to bow out
rest
for a
of-
minute. I'll talk to you later. Thank you
You
for
gotta
having
go?
me.
All right, thank
Yeah,
you, Noel.
just for a
Okay.
bit, but I'll be back if you're still on. Bye.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll be right back. I think I have a solution to this problem. I have, so.
Cosplaying for the heck of it. because we're really convicted within ourselves. That's it. If there's no God, there's no justice in any of this. It's just good vibes and feels that we're throwing on everything.
Yeah.
Shall we continue?
Yeah, let me go ahead and press play. Because we're talking about the identity of someone.
So the premise one is necessarily if God exists, God necessarily exists. That's saying that
See right there, God, I am that I am. That's identity. He cannot not know about them. It's revealed to me through scripture. Right there, like he is who he is. He has to know who he is. That's how I know that about God. It's through
You're
scripture, right?
in a sense, you're using a little bit of a Seidenbruggen technique, I think, where you say like, I know who God is, and you know who God is too, the same way I do. Like you're making a point that he's borrowing from the Christian worldview in a sense, are you not? Without
I think he has a definition. Everyone, if they're involved with religion, like the Christian religion argument, you have to have an idea of a God. You have to have some type of belief, even if you lack a belief. Say you lack a belief. No, you lack a faith with that God. Because you think that God doesn't exist enough to play argument that, hey, this thing doesn't exist and let me be political about it. Like it has to exist to you in so much that you're putting up it as a negative. And if you're not putting that up as a negative, then you're just up against it for a group of people.
Well, they
And that's
they
just, you know,
say
free to
I also have it in the same category as God doesn't exist, that unicorns don't exist. They usually say stuff like that.
Well, that's just on them. I think unicorns exist as baby rhinos. But that's just my opinion.
Okay.
And it talks about how, if you go into the Bible, it talks about how young unicorns are prancing around. And unicorn means one horn. And when baby rhinos are born, they only have one horn. So it makes sense to call a baby rhino a unicorn as a certain, like you would a puppy. So
It's
imagine
almost-
if the term is like puppy. You don't
I'll tell
call
you-
a grown dog a puppy.
Okay. I'll tell you what, it reminds me of the type of argument where it gets to the point where it's like, okay, well, Juga Booga doesn't exist. And you go, well, in a sense it does because you just spoke of it.
Well, it exists as an axiom, right? The fact that
Well,
you named
as
something random
what is
is true.
self-evident about it?
Okay.
What is
so
self-evident about Juga Booga?
I think this part is interesting where he's playing this kind of this language game here. And he's like, well, if I can introduce something as a concept, it automatically where I was going. Is he serious with this? I don't know. I don't know if this one can be taken seriously.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. I'm trying to switch earbuds here now, apparently. 2 hours was my limit. the gods of apedom cut me off here.
No.
Okay. So we did that successfully. Yeah, I thought that was funny. He was like, if I say, sugar booga booga, now this entails existence. Like, is that how that works?
That must be how
I kinda-
ontology works, yeah. I mean, it's another argument for SpongeBob anyway, so I appreciate the endorsement.
Right. Objects of the mind or some shit like that. Yeah.
I mean, SpongeBob's the greatest imaginable being. He kind of has to exist.
Yeah. And he's a sponge with living in the ocean who never gets like wouldn't a sponge, if it was submerged perpetually, wouldn't it get like waterlogged and like all kinds of bad stuff would happen to it?
Well, I mean, that just goes to show how magical he is. I mean, normal sponges wouldn't be able to handle it, but the Eternal Hall Monitor can.
It's too much.
So earlier, Noel had just moments ago in the video, he mentioned that the God who knows exactly who he is, and I'm thinking, does he though? Really? Because it seems to me like he's built on the model of the clinical narcissist, and clinical narcissists don't know who they are, right? They have to base their identity on this idea that they project, not on who they really are, right? So he says, "Oh, admire me because I am all powerful," even though he's not. Admire me because I'm all loving, even though he's not. Admire me because I really got my shit together, even though he doesn't. Right? It's just he holds up these ideals that he can't live up to, and says, "I want you to think of those things as me. Don't look behind that curtain and notice just how much I fail." Right? Because I don't even know who I am, and I need you to validate this idea that I'm projecting. Very, very specifically narcissistic thinking. So I don't think he knows who he is.
That was a real short break, and I'm sorry, but y'all draw me back in because I wanted to tell you about the Superman analogy that is extraordinarily similar to what y'all were just speaking about.
Yeah.
So the analogy is that, let's say I as an individual and the amount of effect that I have on the entire world is a minimal amount of effect. I live my entire life and I almost affect nothing whatsoever in the world. However, the character that is Superman has affected and inspired thousands, if not millions, of small children, and they have all put on their parents' drapes or different things and pretended to be Superman, and it has inspired them and it has changed them, and it has had ripples throughout all of society. When all of this is said and done, and I pass away, and many years has gone on, in what sense did I exist more than Superman did exist if Superman has caused more change and effect than I ever did in my life? And,
Right.
and the thing, so that's whatever I think about whenever people say things like the Ooga Booga thing that he was mentioning earlier, that it exists. Well, it exists in the sense that it is affecting other people, even to believe that thing or that ideal or that construct, that it is moving things. So I think that it doesn't exist in a physical sense, but it doesn't. You mentioned ontology. Is it something, a part of ontology, that it exists in some sense? The ideal. I would try to clarify that the ideal exists, and that the ideal has become so meaningful in a way that it is affecting things. It is changing things. And I think everybody has had their Superman moment through childhood, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that was a great example to use Superman. But he may exist more than all of us in the end.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you for that, Robert.
Yep.
That's like Richard Dawkins memes, though, too, right? Like we change our,
it's a
our
meme.
behaviors based on this.
It is a character that is a meme, and it is persistent as hell. But anyway, later.
Yeah, a viral mimetic for sure.
Right. And then, okay, I see. Banter in the side chat there. Cool.
Yeah.
There is nothing. It's just something that you fabricated out of thin air. But
What
that's
makes
about
it
it.
actually matter?
That's it. The fact that you fabricated it and you're using it as an example,
So it exists in some sense because we're speaking of it.
and it's recorded and being recorded about, and people can refer to the whatever the heck you said, meme or whatever.
Ooga Juga.
And so I think that goes back to what you guys were saying earlier, and we were all alluding to that, that these myths caught on, and they just get passed down, and eventually maybe people don't even truly understand why it resonates with them, right? They just kind of keep it going out of tradition. They keep it going because somebody tells them that they must do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of reasons people keep it going. But it's entirely dependent on humans. It's not like a god comes down to carry that torch for anybody. It's just humans circulating ideas.
Right. Well, I mean, so I do think, so some element of that idea that that most people around the world at any given point in history have seemed to resonate with or gravitate towards a god idea of whatever flavor, right? Whatever type of deity you're talking about. But most people seem to be persuaded by the idea that a deity must exist in some form, or many deities, or whatever. So I just wonder how that, like, how do we categorize that psychological phenomenon, right? Because in any other context, we would say that, talking to somebody who is not, there, other people can't see or hear them, right? We might call that, a mental disorder or something like that, right? But in this case, if most of the people around the world claim to be talking to God and we accept it, do we still categorize that? And I've kind of played out the idea that religion is a mental illness, right? Because it seems to be the norm. So I'm kind of stuck on that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the healthiest thing. Tog said Jesus circulated himself.
Yeah.
Oh, he was a big self-promoter. And,
True.
EIEIO says Christians are like the bigoted, superstitious, ignorant people that wrote the Bible book. Maybe so. And and says emphatically that religion is not a mental illness. And I've heard many other atheists make this argument actually. So I don't know if we can categorize it that way since
Right.
it
So
is the norm.
right, it emulates mental illness, but it is not in and of itself necessarily mental illness. It emulates the disorders that it characterizes. And so I don't know what to do with that except to find it unfortunate. But it also draws people in that are mentally ill. Not everybody that's drawn to religion is mentally ill, but it does seem to have a stronger lure for the mentally ill. And not everybody that remains in it is mentally ill, but it does seem to be the strongest hook for people to remain in it, to be mentally ill. So there's a connection there. There's some kind of a correlation, but not a one for one. It's not that religion is mental illness or that every person that's religious is mentally ill. That would definitely be too far. But.
Well, and there's like a distinction there. So I was reading an article earlier on like personal revelation, and the way they described it in this publication was like the still voice, it's like a still quiet voice in your head, right? And I'm thinking, well, everybody would claim to have, if you ask them, everybody has an internal monologue basically. Everybody knows that they're always talking to themselves in some capacity when they're dealing with their day-to-day lives, right? And then at what point do we make that distinction that, oh, this is just, my conscience, Jiminy Cricket in the back of my head, and this one is God? Or you know what I mean? Like, where is that coming from, or how are we drawing that distinction? And I can't quite figure that out. And at times in my life, I know I've had multiple characters playing out in my internal monologues, and I thought, am I losing it? Is this schizophrenia, right? And I had a clinical professional at one point tell me, basically, I understand what you're describing, but when you describe it to other people who don't have the same type of training for discrimination that I do, it could sound like to them that you're talking about some type of clinical disorder, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I found, like, for me, through meditation and other practices, I'm able to quiet those, But then is there one of them that that should remain? Is that the voice of God? Is that I'm still so confused about that.
Right. Right. I just now looked up bicameral mentality, and I've never heard of it before. At first glance, I find it interesting yet improbable, but it's certainly provocative enough that I intend to do more research into it, and we'll see what I find. But in the meantime, I think this is one of the things that Christian fundamentalist churches use to manipulate people that are in the pews. Yeah.
Right.
Where they convince people that their own intuitions and their own feelings, and their own lens when they read these stories, is the Holy Spirit going into them and imbuing them and connecting them. And so through these methods, this perfect spirit reveals truth to them. Right, so it lifts a veil, so to speak, so that now the scriptures can be plainly seen for what they really mean, and without that, the veil is not lifted. So, special spirit goggle vision, and by teaching people to think that their religious ideas that have some emotional connection to, and that it satisfies their pattern-seeking brains, that these experiences of eureka, of epiphany, of discovery, of transformation, of intuition, to think of these as gifts from a perfect being means that people aren't properly recognizing their own mind and the happenings of their own mind. They're not taking ownership of it. They're not taking responsibility for it. And it means that these people are being further and further invested into the religion that gave them these ideas, because they think they're experiencing direct communication from God, when really they're only experiencing lensing that's been sculpted while they were sitting in church. And because they don't understand how that mechanism works, they're thinking of it as a magical phenomenon from a magical sky father. It moves their sense of identity further and further into dependency with the religion that gives them these ideas, because they're taking it as evidence that they themselves are enlightened and worthy. And they wouldn't want to let go of that feeling because it speaks to their identity and their value as a person. And that's so addicting, and it's so empowering, and it's so connecting to a narrative of experience that it makes it to where they can't ever free themselves from it afterwards. And so if there's any ideas that they put in the box of things that the Holy Spirit told them about that aren't true, they're never going to discover that those things aren't true, because they put them in a box in their own brain labeled "never question the stuff that goes in this box." And the stuff that went in that box is everything that they thought the Holy Spirit gave them. And so it makes religious ideas permanent within their brain, indelible, and very, very hard to scrub out later if they ever overcome the programming. And so this is why the Holy Spirit phenomenon is a psyop. It's a mental technology developed by these religions to manipulate people and to further anchor them into a false reality.
Yeah, and I also think on the flip side of that, right, they could use it. So if they have any intuition that is contrary to whatever is orthodox in the church, right, then we'll say, well, look at this. This is obviously like demonic. This is obviously heretical. And to admonish them for whatever that intuition might be, if it contradicts the narrative that they're trying to push, right?
Yeah.
And welcome to Tilting Windmill. Good to see you. This is so narcissistic. And King Bone, thank you for the like. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Tilting. Appreciate it. Sometimes I'm not sure if the things that are coming out of my mouth are coherent. I'm not sure.
No, I think I followed you there. I mean, yeah, it was, sometimes we get caught up in our own thought. We're not sure if we're really, fully listening, so we try to think
Sure.
both ways.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Ooga Jooga, yeah, see? If you remember it. But that doesn't make it tangible, even though we have it on record. It exists
Well,
only
that's
in
what
that
they're saying.
format.
That's what they're saying when you're saying they're recognizing God.
Right. They think Christ may have lived, but they don't think he resurrected.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit more specific. Okay.
It's the same breath. Because that's what it boils down to. It's the linchpin on everything. It's the cross. Well named, right? If you want to know God, you got to go through the Son. It's the only way.
Yeah.
Blah.
But yeah, let's continue this. Let's play.
But if God exists, it exists as a necessary being, not an infinite regress or brute fact. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I think I agree with that.
And then premise 2, possibly God does not exist. Do you agree or disagree?
When you're saying it just like that, I would say it would be an impossibility.
There you go.
How would it be an impossibility that God does not exist?
Because he's necessary.
Going back to what you first said, if it's conceptualized, yeah, we can conceptualize a world without God. But if God
Conceive
is
of, you mean.
necessary, and it has, yeah, conceive, whatever. Sorry. If God is not has knowledge, okay, what's
So again, to be charitable to both these individuals, right? They're both from different perspectives, trying to help Tog Noel to refine his arguments and to better understand the arguments he's making, right? I see that on both sides here. I don't know if you have any commentary on that, James, or opinions either way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure what they mean when they say that God is not a brute fact, he's just necessary. Like, I don't know how they're defining brute fact there, because it seems like in the context of Christian fundamentalist ideas about God, he's the brute fact that everything traces back to. So for them to say, oh, he's not a brute fact, I'm like, well, where'd we get this? Like, where'd we go now? Like, I don't even understand. Like, all of a sudden, we're not even on the same map anymore of ideas I've heard from Christians. So I don't even know what to do with it.
I mean, I think they're removing some of the language there. So, like I was saying earlier, like if you were to get into the weeds with Darth Dawkins on something like this, he would say it is like an ultimate being that is a necessary precondition for X, right? And so they would go into all of that, and we're just kind of trying to strip it down to like say, okay, if it's a brute fact, then it might not be necessary. If it is necessary, then it is non-contingent and preconditional for whatever the next thing is, right?
That's still a brute fact, right? It's the thing that just is, that's self-existing, and that everything else depends on. That's the brute fact. That's the thing that they are both arguing for and against at the same time, and I don't know what to do with that.
Well, I think they could say that like gravity is brute fact, right? We have the fact of gravity, but they're going to say that gravity is contingent on, and then they're going to go back to God in the theistic worldview. So,
but God still ends up being a brute fact in that paradigm. Like, they're not really getting away from that claim that God's a brute fact. Like, I don't. Yeah, gravity's not a brute fact, as Nymph points out. Like, I don't even know what they're saying there. But go ahead. I don't even think they know what they're saying.
yeah, the language might be a little sloppy here as far as metaphysics goes.
okay? What's the difference between? Is there some type of philosophical difference between conceivability and conceptualization?
Yeah,
Because I'm thinking those-
he's stuck on that distinction, isn't he? And I don't know
Yeah.
why. Maybe you could ask him.
All right, yeah, I'll have to see. I'll check that.
Well,
because have
I
no
think
idea.
interestingly enough, both of those things are going to fall outside of physicalism. Would be the better point. What are conceptions and things we conceive?
So I just want to point something out
You
real
know,
quick.
Right, well, I can,
these are metaphysical
weird thing.
ideas.
I can be delusional. I can still make my delusion.
They do seem to be Yahweh smuggling, right? Because when they're talking about what's necessary and ultimate and all this other stuff, even though they're being kind of fuzzy with some of this, then they're talking about like certain characteristics of a necessary thing, but then they're also meaning at the same time, this is Yahweh. This is what Yahweh is, right? And this is how we know Yahweh equals true. But it's not how we know that Yahweh equals true, because even if we grant all of it, whatever the hell they mean by any of it, even if we grant all of it, it does not then logically follow that Yahweh equals true. In the same way, it does not logically then follow that Ganesh must be true, or that Allah must be true. Like, it's completely logically disconnected from the thing they're trying to build with it. Because even if we grant all of it, well, where are we at? We're at deism. Hooray, we're at deism. Now what? And it's just they spend no time building that bridge between these weird metaphysical constructs to their specific ideas about God. And I think that they know they can't do it. I think that that's why they don't spend any time on doing it. And so instead, they shortcut the process to act like as if arguing for these ideas is the same as arguing or presenting the necessity of Yahweh, when it's absolutely not.
Yeah. And so I just did a quick search here, and so according to my AI here, but it seems it seems probably pretty accurate. The distinction here is a brute fact is defined in metaphysics is something that is oh no, actually yeah. So it's a something that is contingent and unexplained fact of the universe, whereas necessity is both necessary and explanatory. So that's the difference in the metaphysical argument here. So brute fact definition: a fact that has no sufficient reason or deeper explanation for its existence, but is just given. And the necessity: a state of affairs that must be true and often explains itself or is explained by a self-sufficient entity.
But it still ends up being God is a brute fact which happens to be necessary, right? It's not as if calling it necessary or arguing that it's necessary, even if they succeed in arguing that it's necessary, which I don't think they have, but even if they were to, it's just a necessary brute fact. It's not like we're not still talking about a brute fact. So I don't even know what to do with it, but it's fine. It doesn't matter to me, right? Because they can't really substantiate that they know what it takes to make a universe, or that they know what it takes to make the facts or logical facts exist, or whatever. They don't really know what it takes to make a universe. So they're just trying to retcon the idea of God to fit into their theory about what it takes to make a universe. They can't do anything with it.
Yep. No God of the gaps here.
Right.
Delusions happen in real life, right? Like I can think that I'm gonna win the lottery and by chance win the lottery. Does that mean that I made it happen or any way, something like that, right? Because I won, or did I have, again? How do I have the knowledge in order to win the lottery and XYZ? As people often sometimes find out, and you have like multiple repeats because they figure out how to win or whatever. But likewise, like if I conceptualize making a car and then I make that car and it exists, so then that's the same thing. It can exist.
Yeah,
So I get what they're saying there.
It's like you look up at a broken clock that's stuck on 2 and you think it's 2 o'clock, but it actually is 2 o'clock, but you're looking at a broken clock. You're right.
I actually,
the clock is inaccurate.
I love where Jay makes this analogy, but it's like, yeah, the broken clock is right twice a day, but you happen to be right on this particular occasion. So, but every other hour or minute of the day, you're incorrect, right? So you have to be right on time to get that. I don't know, like, what does that even mean?
Right. So twice a day you have an unjustified true belief. Yay. Where does it get us? I don't even know what that gets us. But Nymph over there, it had some stuff to post about the ultimate brute fact.
Oh, yeah, okay. So it says, in essence, a brute fact is the ultimate stopping point in an explanatory chain. It's a fact that doesn't require further explanation because it's considered self-evident or fundamental. And then it says, AI says that gravity is a brute fact, though, which I don't agree, but then gravity is gravity. See, so I thought it was a brute fact that, AI might tell us that it is, but I mean, I think it's interesting because gravity itself, right, which we consider like a law or a force, is contingent, right? Because the law of gravity is contingent on matter. Gravity only interacts with matter, right?
Sure, and something is generating gravity. We just don't really understand exactly how that works.
Right.
So, and somebody mentioned infinite regression. And here's the thing, like Christians haven't really solved the infinite regression problem. Because if they have a God that has always existed, then it's always been the I that am, right? It's always been this personal entity that's highly intelligent and thinking about things. Right? He's experiencing himself. Well, thoughts are events, thoughts are happenings. And so if you have logically ordered thoughts, then they happen in a sequence. One follows naturally from the other and from the preceding thought in a logical way. Otherwise, you just have chaos. You just have static. And so he still has his own experience of what we would recognize as time, even if you don't want to call it time. And you still have an infinite regression because he's always been thinking, and thinking is events, right? And so all they've done is take the infinite regression problem for the universe and moved it over into their God, like they're shoving, like sweeping dirt under the rug and saying, "Ta-da, the problem's gone." I'm like, no, you just moved it over there, right? You haven't solved
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. And in this quote, there's a paradox here because Nifam says Bertrand Russell once said of the universe, it is just here and that's all. And that was included when I searched up the brute fact, of course. But I think so. Theists, right? They try to flip that on its head to say, well, if we just say that the universe exists and it's a brute fact, then we have no further reason for inquiry, right? But it's a matter of whether or not we're asking the right questions. And if we're referring to theistic claims, then oftentimes they will say, oh, we have the explanation for this. Here, look at God. It's God. That thing that you can't explain, that was God too, right? And that's actually what's shutting down the motivation for further inquiry
Yeah, it's a
into what's
thought-stopping
actually causing
exercise.
those.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. It ends the discussion. Magic. What happened? Magic. Who did the magic? The magic daddy guy. He did the magic. Yeah. Well, thanks for the explanation, idiot. Moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that so it demoralizes the person coming from like a a worldview of skeptical inquiry that says that has to answer with I don't know in those situations. Anytime there is a gap in knowledge there, they will say, see, there's something you can't explain. Let me fill it with that God, and so it's meant to be demoralizing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But you're still
Right.
right.
It's like the idea of a smiley face on a T-shirt. The T-shirt itself is not happy, right? It's just a
Just
symbol that
the
can represent
symbolism
happiness.
that, yeah, sure. Symbolic translation of happiness. Sure.
Of self. I don't see how like a world without it is possible because it already has the knowledge of its own creation that it
I also, just to quickly touch on that point there with the symbolism, I was recalling somebody was talking about the image of the crucifix and how prevalent it is in modern Christianity, and how it's like, if Jesus really did come back, do you think you would want to see people, portraying an image of him suffering during the crucifixion? I mean, wouldn't it be more apt to like have some symbol of the empty tomb or something like that, like not portraying, well, some people would say, oh, well, that's really the magic, is the sacrifice, the human sacrifice actually makes the magic, right? But as far as symbolism goes, I mean, it seems to be kind of portraying the wrong message to me, to show Jesus hanging on the cross.
Yeah.
that it created everything. How could you take away that knowledge of what it's done?
You're just saying if
It's
Superman
just
is from
not- yeah,
Krypton, then Superman obviously is from Krypton. You're
It's
just
just-
defining something in
that-
terms of its own self.
Well, yeah, it's just not engaging with the argument. He's just like, this God already exists. But that's not what the argument was actually showing, that the God does not exist, right? So you agreed with premise 1. So premise 2,
He can't handle that. He can't. He's like, no, you made God. You said he's a necessary being, right? And in
Yeah.
that necessary being, you have to accept all the clauses of the Bible, right? Because he's talking about, we're both under the impression of the Christian God, right? So that means he knows it's everything included in the Bible. It goes with the I am that I am. It goes with the omnis.
I just
All
want to point
that's
something out real
inclusive
quick.
into that, in that little bit of
Christine Hayes from Yale University has a lecture about this. Moses in the beginning of Yahwehism. She explains many things that are relevant in that video. And one of the things in her online lecture that's still available on YouTube is she points out that that the story doesn't necessarily have, in fact, it doesn't have God revealing that his name is I am, or I am that I am. This is a mistranslation and a misunderstanding of what's happening there. At no point in the Hebrew Bible does God reveal his name as I am. Instead, what looks to be happening is that God is saying, none of your business. I'm refusing to tell you what my name is. Instead, the phrase could be interpreted as, I shall prove to be who I shall prove to be. In other words, I'll make myself known through my actions. I don't need to give you a name to identify me with. But there are other possible interpretations as well, or translations. And she points out we don't really know. No scholars know what it's supposed to say there. And so people just make these ideas about, well, it might have meant I am he who causes things to become. I am he who gets things done. I am he who's refusing to give you my name at all, because I'll reveal myself in a different way. Wait, there's all these different possible interpretations, and the least likely of all of them is I am that I am as an actual name. And so, but Christians don't know that, and they inherit this idea, this dogma about a name that they build other ideas on top of, and so they become intertwined with it as a necessity to hold up their structure of dogmas. But it's not really borne out by the facts. So I just want to point this out, that with the best of intentions, and I understand Noel's not here to defend their ideas about it, but if he does some research, he'll find out that that name probably isn't supposed to be in there as a name. It's not a thing.
That's interesting. So, I mean, I don't know much about, obviously the ancient works, right? But I mean, from my understanding, like we have I am that I am, but then there are other passages where I think it might be Jesus, if not the deity himself, but one or the other says, "Oh, I have been known by this name and that name, and what you call this or that. Those are all me." Right? Like all of these different gods that have been named in the past. I'm actually all of those guys.
Yeah, I understand. That's another possible way to look at it. But
Is that of the same passage, or is that?
the one I was talking about is when Moses is talking to the burning bush, who is God speaking through a
Right.
burning bush. He's like, "Who shall I tell the Pharaoh sent me?" And then the voice of God responds. But it's not an identity. It's a refusal to give an identity, as far as what Christine Hayes thinks is probably the case. Because in ancient times, back when these texts were being circulated, these stories, I should say, the common idea was that the gods don't want to reveal their names to mortals, because once you know the name of a deity, then you have power over them. You can call upon them, even when they don't want to be called upon. And so they would commonly refuse to give their name. And so it's possible that they were refusing to identify themselves at all. Just, I will identify myself later through my actions instead of giving you a name right now. We don't know for sure. It's all different. There's many different ways to interpret it. You can come up with completely different meanings for the phrase, and we just don't know.
Okay.
of argument of God's self-knowledge. That's all in there. Because his spirit's the one who guided people to write those things in order to teach us, because that's what a good father does. when he leaves a decent lineage. And that's kind of something that they're missing out on and they don't get.
Yeah, they're not going to care about that. Like,
Right. You think, how could they?
Well,
That's
the other guy's attributing your argument to Superman now, right?
right.
Like,
Yeah, right. I call
you
that
want,
out.
you want, you want to, yeah, I would say stop him and say, well, that's not my argument, but you're making some sort of parallel, I guess, but it's not my argument. You can do that, but I don't know. See what happens.
Possibly God does not exist. You said you can conceive of a world with no God, which would show you that in the possibility modality, I believe is the correct terminology. It's possible that your God does not exist, which, given that the claim is that if it exists, it would be a necessary being, it would have to exist in all possible worlds. You can conceive of a possible world where that God does not exist, which means that that God cannot be a necessary being, which is why the conclusion.
Which is all based on our thoughts. Because I conceptualize. That doesn't make sense. That's like what that's how I took it.
He's trying to. And
So I kind of think what he's trying to point to here is that a being that is ultimately necessary in the universe can't be contingent on individual human minds, right? It wouldn't work that way. I think that's kind of what he's trying to say, but they're kind of oversimplifying things here a little bit.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I mean, I feel the same way Tilting feels. The more they try to explain what they mean, the less I understand about what they mean.
Yeah, I mean, philosophical jargon is difficult, and it's easier to try to break it down into simpler language for sure. And this is often a problem in trying to read any of like the Bible. Is it practical? Like, is it pragmatic for me to sit here and go through this complex, and I use scare quotes there, like explanation for genealogy and things like this, and how much time will I spend counting the begats before I realize that this doesn't add up to an accurate representation of history.
Right, and I think just and in a way, this is what's happening here too, because the implication here is that all these concepts are embedded somewhere in the subtext of the stories, the subtext of the foundation of these religions, and that somehow the writers were aware of it, that they were grounding their epistemology in these metaphysical constructs that are deeply philosophical, and that's not what's happening there at all. If you were it wouldn't matter if the ancient people that were writing these stories and circulating these stories could come forward to the future and listen to these philosopher bro Christians talk about their stuff, even if they could translate that, like we could tell them, oh, it means this and it means that, they would still be shaking their head like, we weren't thinking any of that shit. We were just like, look, right? It was none of that stuff. It was magic is real. Magic people are real. Magic people are what makes crop fails, right? They're just like simple shit. Like, there's none of this stuff. And they grounded their epistemology in rumors and in stories and in really simplistic fundamental concepts that had nothing to do with philosophical substrates and all this archetype bullshit. None of it.
Yeah, and how much of that is just confounding the listener to say, okay, eventually at some point, if I keep talking, they're just going to nod their head and say, okay, yeah, I agree with you, bro. Now please let me go. Like, I got to get out of here. Like, and then we're going to like use social stigma to force them to listen, I guess. Right.
Right. I agree with you 100%. And I also agree with Tilting Windmill. They muddy the waters to make them seem deep. They're not deep. The waters of these biblical stories, narratives, dogmas, cultures, traditions were not deep at all. And they're just trying to make them deep, because the more that secular people have interesting philosophical and linguistic evolvements and looking at things from new ways, and the Christians discover these secular people having these important conversations, and they go, "Oh, let's pretend that that's what these writers in these ancient goat herder religions were really talking about." But it's not. It's not even relevant to any of it. They were not. Even today's Christians, most of them, absolutely do not ground their epistemology in the concepts that JG is talking about here, or that Side 10 Kate would be talking about. None of that shit's happening. If you play some of these clips for the average Christian today, they'll be like, "What the hell is he talking about?" Right? Because none of this is part of their psyche. None of this is part of their experience of God or their understanding of their own religion. None of it is.
Yeah. And I think it's probably intended in a way as like intellectual espionage, to some extent, to say, oh well, this person, I have difficulty arguing against them, so I want to use words to make them look unintelligent, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the point of presuppositional apologetics. It's the recognition of the fact that they can't win the debate, and they're never going to be able to. And so if they can find some way, some rhetorical gimmicks, to prevent the rest of the discussions from even happening, to invalidate their opponent before their opponent makes any points at all, then they don't even have to win the debate. They can just declare win by default because the other person is not allowed to play. And it's just a gimmick. That's all it is.
He's borrowing from Darth's methodology and trying to invert it on you. Which you're doing well. If I just watched this on my own, I would have been surprised at your answers. I would have complimented you. I would have brought it to your attention, because that's the idea. It's not about starting with if God exists. It's God does exist, and he is the necessary precondition for absolutes like logic and morality that we rely on. Therefore, God is. You start to point out that you're not claiming it's an if argument. It's the hardest argument you can make. You're claiming God is the necessary precondition for all reality. Now, he's not going to like that, but if that's the beauty of it, you say, oh, good, you don't like it, you don't agree, have at it. You have to learn how to be able to deconstruct what he's bringing to the table and point out through observation, experience, and sense data, he can't bring in the things he's bringing into the conversation. That's where that leads. You pointing out that his epistemology is barren. And if you want to, or if it goes there, that he's ethically absent as well. You can't derive an ought from an is, and his position is naturalism.
I want to object.
God does not exist.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, because
I want to object to that too. His position is naturalism. I mean, here's the thing. Supernatural doesn't mean anything. It is a nonsense word. It's a placeholder, a wild card for a concept that the speaker does not actually possess. If gods exist, if demons and devils and whatever exist, ghosts and spirits, they are natural. In fact, they're more natural than we are, because we're a byproduct of whatever the god's supposed to be, right? They're natural. They are some form of energy, even if it's alien to us, even if it functions in different principles, has different relationships to time, whatever you can and can't build with that energy. It's some form of energy that exists in reality. Then he's natural. Supernatural means nothing at all. And so there is no distinction to be made between an atheist or which isn't automatically naturalist, but between a naturalist view and the Christian view, or a Christian view, I should say, because there's a bunch of different ideas about what it means to be Christian. All these different ideas about what it means to be Christian, what it means to be God, what it means to be a soul, etc., are all natural. They're not supernatural. Supernatural is a word meant to give the illusion that they're having a different conversation, but they're not. It's the same conversation. And so when he's saying that naturalism can't be defended, he's defeating his own worldview, because his own worldview is naturalism, just with a dishonest marketing. That's all that it is. It's the idea that some form of energy is what God consists of, and that it's a self-existing form of energy, and that it operates on some kind of principle that's all spooky and mysterious. It's a nonsensical discussion every time they bring it up, and I just wanted to say that really quick.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that I have the same argument against metaphysics. I mean, metaphysics basically says the same thing regarding physics in the physical universe, right? Supernatural and metaphysical are nearly synonymous, but but I think I do I don't know if we'll get to it. Looks like Togg's going to come back in, but he does refer to himself as a naturalist Christian. So I give him points for that one, at least in this conversation. And I think they're somewhat straw-manning Breakfast Tacos because it's something like atheist, naturalist, presuppositional apologetics or something. They leave the word atheist out of there to merely call him a naturalist presupper. So, but yeah, I agree with what you said there. And so if there's anything on top of the natural universe that we experience, right, it's just another layer of the natural of naturalism. I mean, there's no reason to suppose that there's something outside of or beyond the natural universe that we experience. I don't see that.
I mean, even if there is, it's still just natural that is somewhere else. It's still natural. Because it's any kind of energy doing any kind of thing in any kind of form, any kind of way. Any kind of energy at all is, by definition, physical. By definition, natural. Supernatural isn't even a concept. It's just an absolute nothing burger.
Yep.
Because in our error, I could be faulty and know that. I don't know if that just because I'm faulty in that error, and can convince myself there's a world that with no God, how that could be the case.
If your God existed, would it allow us to create a sound argument that it does not exist?
Allow us to?
Yeah, if it existed, would we be able to create a sound argument?
That's weird because he's saying, "Can we lie?" Right? Like that's weird. Like
So this one, I mean, he went the wrong way on this one, right? He asked, "Is it falsifiable?" Right? That's the question, because any naturalistic explanation is falsifiable. And outside of that, if it's unfalsifiable, then it's likely not true, right? Or we haven't found a sufficient methodology in order to analyze it.
Yeah, if it's unfalsifiable, then it's arbitrary.
Yeah. But he's going to, do people lie? Which is a completely different question. But, I mean, yes, obviously they do. So.
Right.
Which I don't think is good for their side of the argument.
Well, even in Bibles, God lies.
yeah, we lie.
Yeah. He lies and he changes his mind, right?
Yeah.
Would God give me it's like, would God give me the ability to let me think I'm making a sound argument that it doesn't exist? Well, sure. You can choose whatever you want to do. And
I wonder how Ace Theo would answer that, right? Because God's in all things, so God can prove that he doesn't exist. So I do think in some sense that like maybe God can do that if you're an enemy of the Holy Spirit, but that's a stretch of an idea.
God can do what?
Make a sound argument that he doesn't exist.
Well, it's more like you can be self-deceived into thinking that you have a sound argument that God doesn't exist. You know, that's where I think I would be helpful here is he can't make that argument. I know he can't.
Right.
So I would allow him to proceed. Yeah.
Worldview that your God does not exist.
We've done quite a bit of whoa, hey. Rolling around in a garbage can?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm cleaning up a bit.
You're good. I mess with you. All right. So yeah, thanks for coming back, man.
Yeah, my poor
I
cat
think
knocked
I-
over my stuff. He came into my room. He
All
got
right,
into it.
gotcha.
Like, damn it. So yeah, my bad.
I will probably have to shut down in a few minutes, but I just kind of wanted to give us an opportunity to talk here. So I've been,
So I dropped a link real
Listening.
quick. We don't have to play it. It's a Dark Matter 2525 video. It starts at 8 minutes and 1 second in, where they're about to describe what supernatural is.
let's see if I can. I'm going to do this. I'll have to open YouTube over here. But Noel, did you have anything you want to say in response to like what we were talking about, like especially concerning supernatural claims? I think that one seems especially relevant here. Or anything else you wanted to say on anything we've been talking about tonight? Because I know you weren't able to stay the whole time, and
Right. No, I think about the I am thing, I agree with you. It's not that he's revealing his name, but definitely revealing that the presence in which that he's there, in order to tell that the Pharaoh that, hey, not the I am, but the God of. I mean, that's how even Moses presents it to Pharaoh. He doesn't give him a name. He just says the God of the Hebrew people. So if he was, why didn't he say the I am of the Hebrew people, right? So that's automatic right there. He's signifying his presence. And the other thing was, what was it? With the supernatural, yeah, like I agree with that. It has to be natural. And later on in the video, I actually go to a little thing about that with JG, because it's like, well, what do you call it? Substance, and he's like immaterial. But I would call it life, because if God is life, then is life then immaterial? The stuff that we, and then that's a weird argument. So I would agree with that.
I
It
appreciate
has to be, yeah, it has to be material. So that's
Yeah.
why I say I'm a Christian materialist. So that wouldn't make sense to not be.
it. Right, I appreciate that. That's very reasonable. I appreciate it a lot.
all right, cool. So looks like I got this pulled up. And did you have the timestamp here? Was it like 8 minutes, James?
8 minutes.
for
8
this,
minutes and 1 second, roughly.
Okay, all right. I'm going to share this real quick, and we can check it out. If I can figure that out.
I tried to include the timestamp in the link, but sometimes it
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah, it worked. I just
All right.
wanted to make sure it wasn't a mistake.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yes. Look, I'll attach another Paradox Forum 2525.
What are you doing? You can't attach that many paradox forms to an application.
Look, what am I supposed to do? This Yahweh is a plan for godhood with multiple severe paradoxes. He wants to be everywhere all at once, yet reside beyond space and time and interact with the universe. He wants to have a plan that will play out exactly as he wants, while allowing everyone to be able to do exactly as they choose. He wants to be perfectly good, yet require an abundance of evil, suffering, and sacrifice to fulfill his wishes. This guy wants to be all-powerful, yet he wants to have enemies who rebel and try to defeat him.
None of that's really a problem.
Really? Why not?
Just attach a supernatural form 777.
Supernatural? What the hell is that?
The supernatural?
Yeah.
It's nothing. We made it up. It explains away all problems.
Okay, I'll bite. How does that work?
Anytime anyone brings up one of those paradoxes you mentioned, we just say it's supernatural. For example, how can a timeless being make a decision when every decision requires at least two distinct temporal states? Because he's supernatural. How can a spaceless being be distinguishable from other identities without distance to separate them? Supernatural. How can a spaceless being retain the countless gigabytes of information it would require to know everything? Supernatural. And how can he be immune to causality and complexity?
Supernatural?
That's right. The supernatural is not bound to any form of reality with which anyone will ever be familiar. It can be created, destroyed, or eternal. It has never been sampled or measured in any way, shape, or form. Its existence is entirely unverifiable, and therefore any characteristics of it are eligible to be invented by anyone on the spot. Any and all problems with the concept of God, or any assertion really, can immediately be cured by attributing them to the supernatural. This can completely nullify any and all arguments, forever.
But surely no thinking person is ever going to be satisfied with that.
You'd be surprised.
That was hilarious. Oh,
And
my
there you go.
goodness. He also put the link for the Wikipedia article on bicameral mentality in the side chat there if anyone's interested.
Awesome.
All right. Well, cool. It is probably time for me to go and start making dinner for the family here. Does anybody have any closing thoughts, remarks, or stuff you want to plug? Anything coming up on your channels?
No, just thanks for having us. Have a good one. Bye.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for coming by.
Good times are had by
Appreciate
all.
you, buddy. Yeah, going on over 3 hours. This is my longest stream in a bit, so I could use you as a pencil as long as I can grab you by the back of your head, if that's all right. But I would want consent for that. So
That'd make a great T-shirt or bumper sticker for sure.
all right. Much love to everybody. I'll try to hit people in chat, and thank you, James, for coming by and staying with me.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, always appreciate conversing with you. And everybody go check out James Apperson's channel if you can. I definitely recommend it. We had Sandy here earlier, Will Freeman, got Viking Silverwolf. I'm still trying to... It's I-E-A ho 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 ho, I think. I think I missed an I there. Anyway, this one guy, of course, Noel, Eric von Where's Your Faith, and scrolling down here, I see more people. Of course, Nymphaeum Vox, Skeptic Philosophy, Robert, also on the panel, much appreciated. And then Brojo was here. I know Brojo is here for sure.
Thank you, Tilting.
And Tilting Windmill, of course. And Tilting Windmill shared the link down there. Thank you so much. King Bone, and thanks to King Bone for the like again. And Geo Sam, ooh, almost missed one. You can't miss them. So anyway, much love to everybody. Be kind, be well, and stay trusty. And I'm trying to do the same here. Just want to.
No worries. Thank you for that, Tilting.
Anybody here?
And through that link, that last, it's not really a link because I'm in the StreamYard interface, but that's usually where I'm at these days when I have time. I go in there to have discussions with people about philosophy and religion and life, love, whatever.
Oh. Do I have to subscribe to this, or do we just jump in? How does that work?
I think as long as you have an Google account, you just jump right in. I didn't have to do anything special, I don't think.
Okay, cool. So I'll save this to my bookmarks here. Sweet.
It's meant to be a language learning platform for people to learn like English or whatever, but I already knows me some Englishes, so I just go there to have conversations.
All right, good deal. Good deal.
All right, guys.
All right, well, everybody be kind, be well, and stay trusty, and we'll see you next time.
See ya. Thanks. Bye.
Enjoy your week.